Chapter 1141. The interrogation continued. The next person to step forward was from Balance Flame High School. My name is Zhong Yuni, from Balance Flame Middle School. When I went to the washroom, I found this man lying here, and he seemed to have been hit by the starfire spell. I don't know who framed us. I didn't know who was trying to frame us, but after discussing it with my senior brother, I decided to do it. Gu Xuanji stared at Zhong Yuni and said, "Go on." Student Zhong Yuni told the truth. While the starfire spell ignited the wood shavings, it wasn't fatal. So after some calculations, we immediately calculated the core-piercing punch from Northern Fist High School and punched Zhu Hanyun in the abdomen. Everyone was horrified. Nan Ishio, who had been the first to confess, hadn't expected the guys who came later to be more vicious than the other, to dare go to this extent. The wear-piercing fist was one of the basic martial arts of Northern Fist High School. The spiritual root was like the wick of a cultivator, and the so-called wear-piercing fist was a fist technique that could cause penetrative damage to the spiritual root. If the strength was a little bit too much, it could be fatal. In a flash, Zhong Yuni's suspicion grew. But Zhong Yuni had another explanation for the bleeding. We calculated it, and this punch was just calculated by the people from Balance Flame High School. It was just a move to frame someone, and there was no way they could have learned it so well in such a short time. They could only imitate 60 to 70% of it, and they wouldn't have been very strong. So we only intended to leave a trace of the core-piercing punch, but didn't want to kill Zhu Hanyun. It also couldn't have caused the spiritual root to bleed. Zhong Yuni's explanation still couldn't completely dispel suspicion, but Gu Xuanji didn't think Zhong Yuni was lying. This group of people from Balance Flame High School was a standard straight-A student who had to calculate the trajectory of a parabola when throwing a fireball. If this group of people had made a move, they must have done precise calculations. So if Zhong Yuni wasn't lying, then the bleeding in the spiritual root must have been the result of someone trying to take advantage of the situation and stab Zhong Yuni in the punch. After a final investigation, Gu Xuanji's gaze finally locked onto a person that almost no one would expect. "You did it right, girl?" Gu Xuanji stared at the junior sister who was crying miserably as she hugged Zhu Hanyun's corpse. This was Zhu Hanyun's junior sister who had been thrown in the first round. It was obvious that she had a good relationship with Zhu Hanyun. Therefore, after Gu Xuanji came to this conclusion, another student from Titan High immediately jumped out to smooth things over. "What nonsense are you talking about? Junior sister Ah-chun is the best with eldest senior brother." Later on, Gu Xuanji found out that this little junior sister who was crying miserably was called Yin Xiaochun. She was pure as her name implied, and she looked harmless to both humans and animals. She clearly weighed over 1,000 pounds, but she was so thin that she looked like a weak and pitiful child. But as a keeper of order, Gu Xuanji had seen this kind of disguise many times. These days, even the little girl who handed him orange juice might have two faces, let alone this little junior sister. Gu Xuanji smiled and began to explain his conclusion. "There are a few reasons for my suspicions. First, junior sister Yin Xiaochun was the first to discover the crime scene. After Balance Flame Middle School's Zhong Yuni used the knockoff version of the core-piercing punch, he didn't cause any bleeding. So if junior sister Yin Xiaochun noticed it first, she'd have a good chance to land the killing blow and take advantage of the situation to injure her spirit root and cause internal bleeding. It's just that junior sister Yin Xiaochun probably didn't realize that this senior brother wasn't the real senior brother, and that the real Zhu Hanyun had been replaced a long time ago. What's lying here now is just a prop created using the construction spell. Also, the senior who used the construction spell was clearly a veteran, and his skills were so good that he could almost pass off the fake as the real thing. Also, I just asked the students from South Sea Sky High to carefully rearrange the sequence of spells cast. Now I can be 100% sure that student Yin Xiaochun was the last to cast the spell. Although the core-piercing punch is a martial arts fist technique, spirit energy is also attached to the surface of the fist because it has to shock the spirit root. Gu Xuanji said, "It doesn't matter if junior sister Yin doesn't want to admit it, because according to the characteristics of the core-piercing punch, after you used this move on your senior brother, the spirit energy penetrated his dantian and injured his spirit root. so the spirit energy molecules in his body would also stick to his body. And this is direct evidence. As for student Zhong from Balance Flame Middle School, he deliberately missed this punch, so student Zhu's spirit energy wouldn't be on him. Of course, this was just Gu Xuanji's current speculation. When he saw junior sister Yan Xiaoqun's face turn uglier and uglier, he knew he was mostly right. But there was still one thing that Gu Xuanji didn't understand, and that was that he still hadn't found junior sister Yan Xiaoqun's motive. Someone who couldn't have done it at all had done it. There could only be one explanation for this. That was this junior sister Yan Xiaoqun wasn't the real junior sister Yan Xiaoqun. She was probably being controlled, or she wasn't Yan Xiaoqun herself at all. Gu Xuanji actually had the ability to verify this. But there were too many people here, and Gu Xuanji knew very well that the teachers and principals outside were also watching the situation. If he chose to make a move, he would definitely expose his true strength. Thus, Gu Xuanji could only continue to provoke them with words. I know everyone thinks that junior sister Yan Xiaoqun couldn't have done it, but has it ever occurred to you that this junior sister Yan Xiaoqun has already been switched? They were all smart people. When Gu Xuanji said this, the Titan High School students who had defended her earlier stopped talking, because the reason that she had been switched was completely valid. Yan Xiaoqun was the first person Zhu Hanyan had sent up. In other words, she was the first person to reach the top. After reaching the top, there was a gap of several minutes before the second person was sent up. Who knew what had happened in that gap of a few minutes? For a very long time, the scene fell silent. Junior sister Yan Xiaoqun buried her head, and her crying had completely stopped. Since she had already been exposed to this extent, there was naturally no need for her to hide. And the next moment, a horrifying scene that made everyone's eyes tremble happened. Junior sister Yan Xiaoqun's scalp actually split open in front of everyone. A terrifying ghost hand densely covered in evil runes stretched out of Yan Xiaoqun's body, and at the same time, it let out a cruel laugh. I've underestimated you little ghosts. A very strong aura. Gu Xuanji narrowed his eyes. Just as he had guessed, this Yan Xiaoqun wasn't the real Yan Xiaoqun. Immediately after, two ghost claws and an ethereal body scuttled out of Yan Xiaoqun's body, and in a flash, all the lights in the corridor went out. The nightmare had already descended. Chapter 1142. In the darkness, all kinds of screams rang out one after another. Most of the students' vision went dark, and all kinds of nightmares actually appeared in their minds. These were nightmares that they had dreamed of before, nightmares that could wake them up from their deep sleep. Now it was as if they were old photos that kept looping in their minds. Very quickly, a lot of people found it hard to breathe, and their faces gradually turned pale. Super Chun, Hero Gua, Lotus Sun. Without exception, they all fell to the ground. The air around them was infinitely compressed, and a sense of suffocation swiftly surged up. Then, their limbs twitched because they couldn't breathe. It's all over. In the gloom, a pair of bloodshot red eyes glowed faintly with a cold light. It originated from an illusory spirit body, and echoed in everyone's minds like a nightmare. Nightmare, as expected, you've come back to life. The number one person of the Dark Network before Ultimate King of Killers. At that moment, President Qi's voice suddenly echoed in the corridor. Dressed in a white coat, he stared at the twitching children on the ground and sighed softly. I wanted to ferret you out, but I still underestimated your ferocity. I never thought that you wouldn't even let these children off. I didn't want to act early, as it would disrupt our master plan. We can only blame these students for being too smart. You were actually able to see through my identity. Nightmare Lord's voice was a little hoarse. Just listening to his voice was enough to make one feel uncomfortable. Why did you attack Zhu Hanyan? According to the plan, Titan High was the first school I was going to dismantle. Zhu Hanyan was their captain. Since I had the opportunity, it was naturally best to get rid of him first. I quietly attached myself to the students who were coming up the stairs, and in order not to be discovered, I kept shuttling back and forth between the students, said Nightmare. Get rid of Titan High first? President Qi gleaned this information from Nightmare's words. Logically speaking, Titan High shouldn't be able to have any effect on a top expert of the dark network like Nightmare. But now that Nightmare had said that he wanted to attack this group of Titan High School students first, the only possibility that President Chi could think of was that Nightmare and the master behind him were worried that Titan High's meatball tank technology would cause severe damage to the terrain around Nine Dragon Mountain, thereby affecting the position of the Heavenly Meridian main valve to some extent. As expected, this group of people had come for the Heavenly Vein main valve. Where is Dark Ancestor Xie Sanshao now? President Chi asked as he gazed at Nightmare. Nightmare was clearly taken aback by this question, but he soon sneered, as expected of the wisdom saint of the 10 generals. General Chi's reputation is indeed extraordinary, but rather than worrying about Lord Dark Ancestor's matters, you should think carefully about how to save your batch of students. The King of Nightmares chattered on. You carefully selected so many students from all over the country to participate in the body technique competition. These students should be the cream of the crop of the young generation in the cultivation world. Unfortunately, due to your negligence, they all died in my hands. As the commander-in-chief of this competition, you cannot absolve yourself from the blame. What credibility will your Huaxiao alliance have in the future? I never thought that after being dead for so long, Mr. Nightmare would come back to life with a sharper tongue than I imagined. President Chi also laughed. I and my teacher figured out your plan a long time ago. We clearly knew that you would make a move during the National Body Technique competition on Nine Dragon Mountain this time, but we still held the competition. Given Mr. Nightmare's intelligence, you should be able to guess the reason, right? You mean this is a trap? Nightmare's eyes darkened. He couldn't believe it at all and he roared. That's impossible. Look at these kids, they're all lying on the ground. They're twitching all over. They've all fallen into my nightmare reincarnation spell and suffocated to death in their nightmares. There's no way they can come back to life. Nightmare reincarnation spell. This is one of Mr. Nightmare's famous moves back then. President Chi said, Mr. Nightmare is so famous, how could I not know about this move? On the other hand, since I already knew about it, I was naturally prepared. Do you know why I prepared these 700,000 spiral steps? President Chi pointed out the key to this test. When King of Nightmares heard the word spiral staircase, he immediately understood. There are only 2 people in the whole of Huaxiao who can build a dream for multiple people, and one of them is me. The other one is my disciple. But my disciple is on vacation at the moment, so I have to do it myself. President Chi revealed the truth. So Mr. Nightmare, you entered my dream from the very beginning. Everything you see is just an illusion based on my dream. The students who are already dead on the ground have in fact already woken up, and the ones who are twitching aren't real. For these kids, it's just a nightmare. That's impossible. King of Nightmares roared hysterically. Nothing is impossible, Mr. Nightmare. This is a trap I set up for you. President Chi stared at Nightmare and sneered. At that moment, Nightmare finally realized that the situation wasn't good. His insubstantial spirit body swiftly fled frantically through the air in an attempt to rush out of the pagoda. But just when he thought he had escaped, the scene in front of him suddenly changed, and he was back to square one again. President Chi was standing in front of him. Everyone is in the same dream, including you, Nightmare Lord. You can't escape. President Chi's voice was cold. He was a dreamer who built dreams, and no one could escape a dreamer who set up a dreamer's dream. If they were in the real world, the Nightmare Lord would have many ways to escape. But in the dream, Nightmare was like a vicious beast destined to be locked in a cage. Especially when President Chi personally took action. There was no way for Nightmare to escape. It's all over. In the next moment, President Chi snapped his fingers. With Nightmare's blood-curdling screams, the entire nightmare was torn to pieces by President Chi on the spot. And Nightmare's spirit body was completely destroyed. The lights in the pagoda came on again. A lot of people felt like they had woken up from a terrible nightmare, but after checking their bodies, they didn't feel anything wrong with them. The only ones who had it worse were Wang Ling and the others, because they hadn't been hypnotized to begin with, and hadn't been dream-built. They were well aware of what had happened. Thus, when Nightmare appeared, everyone was twitching on the ground, and Wang Ling and the others could only twitch along with him. As his body writhed stubbornly on the ground, Wang Ling felt like a crazed loach. And the most infuriating thing was that President Qi was actually chatting nonstop with Nightmare. When the twitching was over, Wang Ling lifted his clothes and felt that the outline of his abdominal muscles had become even more distinct. It's so hard for me. Illusion Moon Academy The Daily Life of the Immortal King Latest Chapter The Daily Life of the Immortal King Chapter 1142. Wang Ling, it's so hard for me. Website. Chapter 1143. From the very beginning, President Qi had set up this trap to capture Nightmare. But this #1 killer of the dark network clearly wasn't the only expert the mastermind had sent behind the scenes this time. Although President Qi didn't know who else there was, Nightmare, who had been the most difficult to catch, had already been caught. As long as the rest were a little more vigilant, it shouldn't be too difficult to deal with them. After tearing Nightmare's spirit body to shreds, President Qi immediately used the magic disc to imprison Nightmare's 3 souls and 7 spirits. This was a magic treasure which he had prepared beforehand to imprison souls. Nightmare was too dangerous and had to be killed, but with his soul shackled, there was almost no danger to speak of. In the command center, Old Huang stared at the magic disc in President Qi's hand and said approvingly, "Well done. Clean and efficient. You didn't embarrass me." In the end, this student didn't disappoint teacher. President Qi nodded slightly, but the expressions on the master and disciples' faces didn't relax. This was just the beginning. They had expended so much manpower to capture Nightmare, and the remaining criminals who were still lurking in the dark would definitely be very careful with every step they took. "When you made your move just now, I received news that Little Bai's reinforcements are about to arrive. They're more experienced in catching these dark network people," said Old Huang. "Oh, it's them." President Qi nodded, unsurprised. The previous time, it had also been those dark network criminals who had caused trouble at a student event, and the Mahjong trio had made a great contribution in that operation. They had helped General Bai deal with a number of troublesome dark network criminals one after another, and all of them were top Red 3A wanted criminals. It was just that their opponents this time might be even more troublesome than last time. At the very least, the people they had dealt with last time had all been wanted criminals who were still alive. And this time, it was very likely that they would be dealing with dead dark network experts. Now the Old Devil, Evil Sword God and the Master of Immortal Mansion were all under General Bai's command. And their codename was Mahjong. In the same van as last time, General Bai and the 3 of them sat in the back and held a simple meeting, because they had no idea who their opponents were at all in this reinforcement operation this time. While Nightmare was already completely under President Qi's control, Nightmare didn't necessarily know who the mastermind behind the scenes had resurrected. Apart from the leader of the Dark Network, Xie Sanxiao, who was known as the Dark Ancestor, they knew nothing about the rest of their opponents. Interesting. I didn't think that even Xie Sanxiao would appear this time. I've been looking for an opportunity to spar with him. Listening to General Bai's account of the whole incident, the Old Devil was suddenly a little excited. "Xie Sanxiao's little finger is very similar to my wife's. If my venerable self can take down Xie Sanxiao this time, will the general give me his right little finger? It won't be too late to talk after you've captured him." The corners of General Bai's mouth twitched. Although the Old Devil had turned over a new leaf, he was still a pervert. But if it was the Old Devil, he might really be able to do it. Because Xie Sanxiao was also a pervert. General Bai still remembered the conversation the princeps had with him before this operation, and one of the words had left a deep impression on him. There is a saying that only magic can defeat magic, so I agree that only perverts can fight perverts. In General Bai's opinion, these words couldn't be more brilliant. If perverts could be graded, the Mahjong trio sitting in the back of the van now had a pervert index that far exceeded the national average of perverts, and could be called the epitome of perverts. One was obsessed with his wife to the point that it was almost to the point of morbidity. Another was obsessed with his eyeshadow, and didn't even know how to do radio gymnastics without it. The last was obsessed with spirit swords to the bone, and couldn't move when he saw a good-looking sword. Furthermore, this symptom was much stronger than that of college students who were clearly struggling to make ends meet, but still had to take out loans to buy basketball shoes. Leading these 3 people to turn over a new leaf was a slightly difficult process for General Bai himself. He only hoped that he wouldn't be assimilated after being in contact with them for too long. Collecting his thoughts, General Bai swept his gaze over the 3 people and said, "We don't know who our opponents are at the moment, but we can analyze them first and prepare ourselves." Saying this, General Bai turned on his wristwatch, and the avatars of many deceased Dark Network members were immediately projected in the air. Since they're going to be resurrected, they definitely won't be small fry. Look at these avatars. Is there anyone you think is powerful enough to be resurrected by the person behind the scenes to become our opponent this time? The 3 of them swept their gazes over the projected avatars, and found that there were indeed quite a few familiar faces. Xiamen is actually dead? When did this happen? The old devil pointed to one of the avatars. It was a middle-aged man with a buzz cut and a very obvious X-shaped burn scar on his forehead. General Bai clicked on the avatar, and this person's profile was quickly projected separately on the other side. Xiamen Rokuro, originally from Sun Island, Dark Network Red 4A wanted criminal, confirmed to have died 20 years ago. Cause of death: annihilated by Mishio Nation's peacekeeping force during a hunter operation, launched by the International Alliance of Cultivators. What you're seeing now is top secret, so there are some things you might not know, General Bai said. From your tone, you sound very familiar with this Xiamen Rokuro? About 50 years ago, I personally looked for Xiamen Rokuro about my wife. I knew that he was proficient in the 7 kills techniques, and had a powerful psychic ability, so I asked him if he could help me find my wife's soul. The old devil folded his arms and said, "But later he told me that my wife had already been reincarnated. Was this also an opportunity for you to launch a series of operations later?" "Yes," the old devil said non-committally, "but I only know that this Xiamen Rokuro is very strong, but I've never really fought him. The rumor is that Xiamen Rokuro's 7 kills techniques are a combination of Sun Island's ninjutsu. He claims that anyone he fights will die in 7 moves. The 7 kills techniques, huh? General Bai made a mental note of this information, which wasn't in the official file. But General Bai felt that Mishio's military cultivators might have known about this, and just hadn't written it down on purpose. This intelligence base was under the jurisdiction of the International Alliance of Cultivators, and various countries worked together to collect intelligence on world-class wanted criminals, which was made public to all countries. However, some Western countries were still unwilling to share the information, and kept it to themselves. At that moment, there was actually something that piqued General Bai's interest. "General Bai, can I ask you a question?" The old devil: "Go ahead, General." "General Bai, I want to know the cause of your wife's death." The old devil's face darkened. "If you think it has something to do with the operation, my venerable self can indeed tell you, but it's a long story." Chapter 1144. A large part of the reason why the old devil had committed so many crimes was because he wanted to find his wife Maya. Asking the old devil to recall that parting of life and death was undoubtedly rubbing salt in the wound, but General Bai had a vague intuition. He felt that the matter between the old devil and his wife could be linked to Xiamen Rokuro. "My wife Maya grew up with me. She used to be a member of the peacekeeping force," said the old devil. "A female peacekeeping force member?" General Bai didn't expect the old devil's wife to have this identity. Furthermore, female peacekeepers were very rare to begin with. Foreign peacekeeping work was relatively complicated, and full of life-threatening dangers. Although there were female peacekeepers, the ratio of men to women was limited, and most female peacekeepers did medical support work. This wasn't gender discrimination, it was just a different division of labor. The main reason was that the organization was more protective of the fairer sex. Peacekeeping work was too dangerous, and if a girl didn't have a strong desire to do so, the organization usually wouldn't specially form a female peacekeeping vanguard. In the end, the work of charging and breaking through enemy lines was still left to those hot-blooded, rough men. General Bai had never heard the old devil talk about his wife before, and was a little surprised to hear her identity as a peacekeeper. But there were so many peacekeepers that it was impossible for General Bai to remember all of them. Is her code name Maya? General Bai asked. No, her peacekeeping code name is you, said the old devil. General Bai was astonished. It's actually her? This was a famous peacekeeper from more than 1,000 years ago. After losing contact during an operation, her whereabouts had been unknown, and it wasn't until 500 years ago that Huaxiu Alliance officially confirmed her death. It was said that a member of the peacekeeping force had found a short knuckle of Miss Maya's hand, and after a DNA test, it was confirmed that it was Miss Maya. But this knuckle had been found in a very strange location in an abandoned Taoist temple. Because it had been so long ago, no one knew what had happened back then. All that was known was that 5 muddy footprints had been found in the abandoned Taoist temple. Someone had stabbed Miss Maya in the last moments before she died. This was the analysis of relevant experts based on the scene. In short, this case had caused a sensation back then, but because it had been so long ago, almost all traces of the scene had been wiped clean with the passage of time. Of course, there was one thing that could be said to be the greatest doubt in this case, and that was where the rest of Miss Malt's corpse went, because in the Taoist temple, only this finger bone was found. Back then, the finger bone left behind an unresolved peacekeeping case. Unfortunately, because of the long time gap, no one knows what happened. General Bai sighed. I remember you. Ah no, Miss Maya. She was the captain of Peacekeeping Team 6 back then. Her performance was excellent, and she repeatedly made contributions. After the case happened, it caused a sensation for a while. I once transferred 3 groups of people, no less than 100 people, to investigate this matter, but to no avail. This is indeed a strange matter. It's not the general's fault. The old devil sighed and said, My venerable self has been searching for my wife's whereabouts all this time, but so far I've found nothing. There will be a day when this matter will be solved. General Bai's mind was in turmoil. He had never thought that the old devil would actually be Moon's boyfriend. His devotion was indeed moving. But a mistake was a mistake, and the road of atonement still had to be taken. Sympathy couldn't reduce a fixed punishment. Otherwise it would be contempt for the rule of law in the cultivation world. General Bai silently kept this in mind. What had happened back then had also been a thorn in his side, and he was looking forward to the day when this thorn would be pulled out. The meeting continued. After composing himself, General Bai turned his gaze to the master of a mortal mansion and evil sword god, who were also deep in thought. What about you two? Are there any familiar faces among them? This one. The master of a mortal mansion pointed to a dark-skinned young man, with a very distinctive hairstyle. This man had an afro. Li Modi. General Bai clicked open this person's profile, and saw where he had come from. This was a dark network expert who had died 300 years ago. At that time, people had given him the nickname of Explosive Maniac Li Modi. His mind burial technique was very troublesome and shocking. Anything that he touched would become a bomb, and the slightest vibration would immediately cause it to explode. Back then, Li Modi could be said to be invincible, because no one could tell whether or not he had touched something. As for his death, it was a complete accident. Is Li Modi also dead? The old devil asked. He is indeed dead, and as for the cause of death, take a look for yourselves. General Bai clicked open the profile. Li Modi, cause of death suffering from Alzheimer's disease in his later years. He forgot that the things he had touched had already become bombs, and accidentally detonated the bombs he had planted. It was okay to forget. Whether it was the old devil, the master of a mortal mansion, or evil sword god, they were all speechless about this cause of death. Evil sword god's focus was also a little strange. Can cultivators also get Alzheimer's disease? There are already pills to treat Alzheimer's disease, but Li Modi, he was wanted all over the world back then, and he ran around everywhere. He had already lost the best time for treatment. Furthermore, he liked to travel alone, and no one was with him. Once his disease flared up, not only would he forget the bombs he had planted, he would even forget to take his medicine. The master of a mortal mansion said, I once fought him. In my intrinsic spirit field, he turned my swords into bombs and blew up several of my beloved spirit swords. If Li Modi comes back to life, It will indeed be troublesome. General Bai also made a note of this person. No one knew more about explosives than he did, because he himself was the explosion saint. He was world famous for his explosive skills. The Thunder Burial spell was in fact a spell that General Bai had developed back then, but because it was too lethal and dangerous, he had destroyed it when he had designed it back then. Even General Bai himself hadn't expected that the spell he had designed back then would actually be used by Li Modi. Of course, General Bai actually didn't rule out the possibility that Li Modi had developed the Thunder Burial spell on his own. As long as one grasped the basic principles of the myriad of spells, they would always be the same. Li Modi was also an explosive expert, so it wasn't strange that he could think of the principles of the Thunder Burial spell. It's your turn. After making a note of Li Modi, General Bai turned to look at Evil Sword God. Evil Sword God pointed at a youngster with an unusual hairstyle. This person looks familiar. I think I've fought him before. He's also wearing eyeshadow. General Bai took a deep breath. Of course you look familiar, because this person is you. The eyeshadow Evil Sword God had also been one of the Red 5A wanted criminals of the Dark Network back then. However, a foreign cultivation peacekeeping unit had caught a swordsman who also wore eyeshadow during a mission back then, and mistakenly thought that this was Evil Sword God himself. In fact, that person was just a copycat criminal, and was said to be a fan of Evil Sword God himself. Unfortunately, it turned out that the gap between the idol of one's dreams and the real person was actually very big. Who knew how that fan who had been caught in Evil Sword God's place back then would feel when he saw this idiotic Evil Sword God without eyeshadow? Chapter 1145. Everyone knew that Evil Sword God's true form was his eyeshadow. Without eyeshadow he was a yes man, but with eyeshadow he was a heavy punch. This was the first time General Bai had seen this kind of freak, who could switch personalities from eyeshadow to himself. But it had to be said that Evil Sword God with eyeshadow was indeed very strong. In General Bai's view, Evil Sword God's sword skills were almost on par with General Yi's. Both of his disciples had such outstanding sword skills, and as Shifu, Sword Immortal Fan Rui shouldn't have any regrets. The only pity was that Evil Sword God had cultivated too aggressively, which had caused his mind to be swallowed up, and he had become what he was now, creating that appalling case of Shifu murder. Thinking this, General Bai sighed in his heart. He had used cold fire to help Evil Sword God create a pair of eyeshadow. Very quickly, Evil Sword God's gaze turned sharp. Everyone knew that Evil Sword God, who had been a heavy punch, had returned naturally. His memories were different when he switched personalities. When Evil Sword God looked at these familiar faces on the projection, the past flashed before his eyes in that moment, and he sneered. With all due respect, I don't think there's anyone difficult to deal with among these people. He crossed his arms confidently and smiled disdainfully at the avatars. Then Evil Sword God pointed to one of them. Criminal file. Name, Berserk Anti, Han Wuya. Wanted level, Red 2A wanted order. Personal summary. A wanted member of the Dark Network. Nicknamed Berserk Anti with golden instant noodle hair. Loves gluttony and is slightly obese. Placed on the global wanted list for robbing banks in 82 countries. Known as one of the most brutal and inhumane robbers in history, she doesn't leave a single cent for others wherever she goes. Anyone who sees her true face is cruelly killed. Ability, famous skill, 8 immortals devour. Berserk Anti can turn her stomach into a small world, forming a black hole for a short time to devour people or things around her. Once a living thing is sucked in, it will be immediately torn to shreds. It's a very tricky spatial spell. Cause of death. During an international peacekeeping mission, she was baptized by Sword Chi and cut into 8 pieces on the spot. She died a tragic death. What happened to this person? General Bai asked. General Bai still had an impression of this person. Back then, Han Wuya had committed a lot of crimes in Huaxiu Nation. She had taken the money and directly fled across the sea to a neighboring country, putting on a very beautiful show of a cicada slipping out of its shell. After that, Han Wuya fled abroad for many years, robbing many countries. When General Bai received news of her again, she was already dead. The truth is that Han Wuya died at my hands. Evil Sword God sneered. That damn fat woman deserved to die. He died at your hands. General Bai, the old devil and the master of Immortal Mansion were stunned. Back then I wanted to sneak into the peacekeeping force and look for the top experts there, but in the end, I ran into Hanwuya. Evil Sword God said. Hanwuya saw through my identity and took the initiative to provoke me. And then, she asked me if she was beautiful. I replied, "What's so beautiful about a fat, oily pig's intestines?" She then challenged me to a duel. Evil Sword God scared. She clearly couldn't beat me, but still insisted on fighting me. I cut off her tongue first so that she couldn't use 8 immortals devour, then cut off her thigh, then her. Slow down. For a moment, General Bai unexpectedly found it a little hard to digest. This plot development, it was a little strange. It's not just this berserk auntie. I see a lot of familiar faces in this projection. They all seem to have died to my sword. Then, Evil Sword God casually pointed at several people. Criminal file. Name, Edward Amen. Wanted level, Red 3A wanted order. Summary. One of the Dark Network's most wanted members. Born with a special glass constitution, he can blend in with his surroundings at any time and place. Nicknamed the Humanoid Chameleon. Has a powerful disguise ability and has planned many assassinations. Recognized by the international killer world. Abilities, glass constitution, assassination skills, etc. Cause of death, failed in an assassination mission. Suspected to have been killed by the assassination target, resulting in a headshot. This person used to be very famous in the killer world. Out of curiosity, my venerable self hired him to kill me, but was greatly disappointed in the end. I never thought this person would be so noob. Evil Sword God side. General Bai, the old devil and the master of Immortal Mansion. Criminal file. Name, Iron Wing King Song Shiha. Wanted level, Red 4A wanted order. Summary. One of the Dark Network's most wanted members. Once regarded as one of the most threatening enemies by the Dark Network's #1 expert, ultimate king of killers. At a young age, he refined his ribs into iron wings on his back, which have powerful defensive and anti-injury abilities. Known as the Iron Wing King, he is indestructible. Abilities. Iron Wing Ambush Technique, Iron Wing Illusion Technique, Iron Wing Throw, etc. Cause of death. Suspected to have been the victim of an enemy's revenge. His death was tragic, and the soles of his feet were pierced by sword chi. Evil Sword God. I really can't be blamed for this person's death. His flaws were too obvious. What's the point of surrounding himself like an iron bucket? Didn't my venerable self's sword chi still kill him from the soles of his feet? Ultimate King of Killers actually regarded him as a strong enemy. That's the biggest joke in the world. General Bai, the old devil and the master of Immortal Mansion. General Bai took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Take a look at these people. How many of them did you kill? Give me a count. Apart from these 3 people, let me take a look at the rest. Staring at the page, Evil Sword God began to list all the Dark Network wanted criminals he had killed, and his face showed the excitement of counting medals. This one, and this one. When I killed them, the terrified expressions on their faces still make me feel incomparably excited when I think about them. These people brag outside every day about how strong they are, but didn't they still die to my sword? A few minutes later, the tally was done. General Bai went through the list. There were more than 100 dangerous Dark Network wanted criminals who had already died in the database. 34 of them, or 1/3 of the experts, had died at Evil Sword God's hands. Over the years, Evil Sword God had relied on his invincible sword chi to look for opponents everywhere. Although he had committed a lot of senseless killings, he had in fact indirectly punished a lot of criminals who had fled. On the other side, Evil Sword God's face was brimming with excitement. They're just a bunch of minions. If I can kill them once, I can kill them again. Looking at the list in his hand, General Bai's mood was very complicated. Chapter 1146. In fact, there was no real second elimination round. The second elimination round was just a trap set up by the officials to capture the Nightmare Lord. However, after the second elimination round, Many headmasters in the command center could not help but focus their attention on one person. This person was none other than Gu Xuanji. This was a new transfer student from number 60 high school this year. Because of his excellent grades, he had been directly selected to participate in the competition and become one of the members who would bring glory to the school. In the entire second round of elimination, Gu Xuanji's performance in all aspects was remarkable. His calm judgment, logical reasoning ability, and understanding of all kinds of spells were almost perfectly displayed in this round. In short, number 60 high this year was a little unexpected. The main thing was that the headmasters present hadn't viewed number 60 high as an enemy at first. Apart from headmasters like Li Qingxi, who had some history with headmaster Chun and were a little wary, the other 95% of the headmasters hadn't specifically analyzed number 60 high's tactics. And now, seeing that the 800 students were about to enter the next round, it was obviously too late to discuss battle strategies. As the third round of the official 9 Dragon Mountain survival battle approached, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal motioned for all the students in their rooms to open a brocade pouch hidden under their beds. There was a golden talisman inside, which the students had to tie to their right arm as a symbol of the third round of competition. This golden talisman was very useful. It could save one's life at a critical moment. If one encountered a dangerous situation, the golden talisman would automatically turn into a golden shield to resist fatal attacks. At the same time, it would release a golden beam of light that would not dissipate in a short period of time to notify the nearby security team and medical team to quickly arrive. At the same time, this golden talisman was also an important item for the 9 Dragon Mountain security inspection team to monitor the students. It could ensure that they could accurately locate each student's activity range to avoid any accidents. "I'm going out for a while," said Xiaoming to his roommate, Tang Jingze, after tying the golden talisman. Tang Jingze felt that the look in Xiaoming's eyes was a little strange, but couldn't put his finger on it. But when he thought about how everyone had just experienced a nightmare from Nightmare, he felt that Xiaoming might still be in a state of shock and hadn't come back to his senses, so he let Xiaoming go. Everyone had a different way of relieving stress. Besides, he and Xiaoming actually weren't that close, so there was no need for him to act like a real mother. After leaving the dormitory, Xiaoming breathed a sigh of relief. He had indeed felt nervous. Although Nightmare had been caught by President Qi, Nightmare's words still echoed clearly in President Qi's ears. Although he knew that Nightmare had been caught, Xiaoming still felt extreme fear from the depths of his soul. He stood in the corridor, trying to find some fresh air. However, he had only taken a few steps away from the dormitory when the scene in front of him suddenly darkened. It was like a scene from a nightmare. The entire corridor instantly went dark. No, Xiaoming felt that this pressure was even greater than Nightmare's. He felt cold all over, and every breath he took was accompanied by white mist. Then, a white-haired youth whose face could not be seen clearly suddenly appeared in front of him. Wang Ling. Xiaoming's pupils instantly contracted. Although he couldn't see the youngster's face clearly, the figure of the white-haired youngster in front of him was too similar to Wang Ling's, as if they had been cast from the same mold. For a brief moment, Xiaoming was a little dazed. "The King of Nightmares has been arrested, but you still have to complete your mission." The white-haired youngster, whose face could not be seen clearly, spoke to Xiaoming in a cold and gloomy voice that carried the scent of Azura from hell, causing Xiaoming to tremble all over. Although this person's figure was very similar to Wang Ling's, Xiaoming could clearly feel that the person in front of him wasn't Wang Ling. Who on earth was this person? He could actually appear here without anyone noticing. Could it be that this was the mastermind behind all of this? You shoulder the mission of the ancient divine clan, and you are also the key to changing the world. As long as you do as you're told, your name will go down in history as a key figure in overturning the world. The white-haired youngster gave a light exhale, and thick fog instantly appeared in the space. In a flash, Xiaoming actually saw the future of the cultivation world. Beautiful, prosperous, and free. Do you see? This is what the future looks like. The white-haired youngster's voice floated in the air. "I can lend you the strength you lack. Lend me the strength." Xiaoming spread his hands, his body trembling slightly as he felt himself being encouraged. Although he knew that his next step might plunge the whole world into eternal damnation, It was as if his thoughts and soul had been controlled in that instant. The white-haired youngster's voice seemed to have a magical power that could draw out the inner demons hidden at the bottom of a person's heart. Then, Xiaoming felt his shadow actually shrink and wrap tightly around his body. A sharp pain surged into his abdomen. Xiaoming crouched down in pain and curled up on the ground. The pain was very short, and when Xiaoming came back to his senses, he found that his shadow had actually turned into an evil eye in his abdomen. Xiaoming really felt a surge of strength surge out of his body. This was a tremendous power that Xiaoming had never imagined, and one that he could control. It was far beyond the foundation establishment stage. Do you feel it? This is what it feels like to be strong. The white-haired youngster's voice floated in the air. As long as you obey my orders, you can become even stronger. This power is just the tip of the iceberg. It can help you smoothly reach the top of Nine Dragon Mountain. Senior. Xiaoming was excited. At that moment, he really felt like he was hallucinating. He felt like he was one of those protagonists who had suddenly had a fortuitous encounter, and whose realm had advanced by leaps and bounds. You have to keep this a secret, the white-haired youngster reminded him. The eye in your abdomen is called the Eye of Rebellion, which is connected to all your blood relatives. Once you betray me, all your loved ones will die because of you. What I hate the most in my life is traitors. Saturday, November 15th. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, for hours after Nightmare had been arrested. When the first rays of light hit the ground at dawn, the 8-day battle for survival on Nine Dragon Mountain officially kicked off. Everyone lined up according to their schools, and one by one, they were scanned by the admission equipment to confirm that they weren't carrying any magic treasures except for the golden talismans, issued by the authorities. Wang Ling and the others lined up for the security check. In the queue, Wang Ling noticed that there seemed to be something wrong with Xiaoming's expression. Xiaoming looked particularly confident today, and also exceptionally abnormal. Chapter 1147. Wang Ling sensed that something wasn't right with Xiaoming. Sweeping his king's eye up and down, he immediately sensed an evil shadow enveloping Xiaoming. And Wang Ling was the only one who could see this shadow. He was well aware that it was a curse. It wasn't that there was no way to break the curse, but everyone was going through the security check now, so it wasn't convenient for Wang Ling to do it. He could only wait for the right time to break the curse. Although Xiaoming had been rude to him before, Wang Ling had no intention of doing anything to him. After all, they were classmates, and now that they had come out to win glory for the school, there was no conflict that couldn't be resolved. Besides, breaking the curse was as easy as lifting a finger for Wang Ling. If there was a reason, it was that Wang Ling felt that the curse on Xiaoming was too vicious. It was a curse that involved people, and had a linkage mechanism. As long as Xiaoming violated the terms of the contract, the curse would immediately take effect. Generally speaking, apart from the person who had signed the contract, the curse would also target Xiaoming's blood relatives. Thus, Wang Ling felt that Xiaoming was most likely being threatened. So the question now was, who on earth had signed this contract with such a vicious curse? This was another question in front of him. When the last person from number 60 high passed through the security check, the Balance Flame Middle School students were collectively stopped at security gate number 2. A teacher in red from the resident special forces stepped forward and divided them to one side for a manual inspection. Why do we have to do a manual inspection? Several Balance Flame Middle School students were puzzled. You've been reported, so behave. The teacher in red spoke resolutely, and then began to search them carefully. In the end, they really did find a problem. In the pocket of one of the Balance Flame Middle School students' uniforms, they actually found a very well-hidden space mezzanine, which was protected against machine scanning. After opening the mezzanine, they found that it was full of banned items for this competition. Student, you can remain silent now. Whether you know it or not, rules are rules, and you've now been disqualified. The teacher in red was impartial, and caught him red-handed on the spot as he took the Balance Flame Middle School boy away. The boy was stupefied, and had no idea what on earth had happened. The result was just as Headmaster Chen had predicted. The students of Balance Flame Middle School were a bunch of nerds who wouldn't do anything illegal, but their principal, Suachingqiu, had secretly tried to get the students to bring in more supplies. And then he was discovered. Do you think it was the headmaster who did it? A few people from number 60 high whispered among themselves. Headmaster Chen's original plan had been for the members of No. 60 high to make a public report during the test, so that Balance Flame Middle School would be the first to lose members. But after some thought, Headmaster Chen felt that a public report would make it easier for the other schools to focus fire on him, so he changed the plan to have Headmaster Chen personally write a report letter to President Qi in secret. Thus, Balance Flame Middle School was reported at the very beginning. In the command center, Suachingqiu, the headmaster of Balance Flame Middle School, was furious. He looked at the other headmasters present, but couldn't find who had written the letter. You. Who wrote the report letter? I will definitely find out. Suachingqiu believed that his arrangements were impeccable, so someone must have written a report. This was too shameless. Old Zua, back then your nickname was unorthodox. Sure enough, after so many years, you still can't change your bad habit. This time you've screwed your good students over. Li Qingxi, the headmaster of number 1 Devil Subduing High, gloated on the side. Given his understanding, he could more or less guess who had written this forbidden report letter. He stole a glance at Headmaster Chen on the side, and saw that the latter's expression was as calm as usual. Then Headmaster Chen sighed slightly. It's already 9102. And there are still people who use such a despicable method like reporting. How shameless. I strongly condemn and protest on behalf of Old Zua. Li Qingxi was stupefied. He felt that it had been absolutely wise of him to specifically mention number 60 high at the meeting back then, and arrange a strategy. As the current headmaster of number 60 high, Chen Tianxiang was indeed a ruthless character. Not only was he very difficult to deal with, he was also a little shameless. On the other side, Hero Gua and the others were sighing with emotion at Headmaster Chen's operation. All's fair in war. Back then, Headmaster Chen was the golden assistant of the year, and many headmasters were played by him. He's too familiar with each other's little schemes. Super Chen sighed. This group of copy ninjas from Balance Flame Middle School was the target that everyone had agreed to focus fire on. Now that they were down one person at the start of the match, it was definitely bad news for them. After passing the security check, the 8-day battle for survival officially kicked off. With each school as a unit, Wang Ling followed everyone into a magic array. The teleportation coordinates of the magic array were random, and all the students in the school would be directly teleported to random locations on 9 Dragon Mountain. The match officially began. General Bai stood on a mountain peak with a mahjong trio behind him. All 4 of them wore pitch-black cloaks and mahjong masks to conceal their identities. General Bai was 9 circles, the Old Devil was 3 circles, the Master of Immortal Mansion was 2 circles, and Evil Sword God was the last to arrive, so his mask was Little Chicken. Early in the morning, 9 Dragon Mountain gave off a rainbow fog. This was 9 Dragon Mountain's unique purifying fog, which was used to maintain the balance of the ecosystem and purify the air and water impurities, so that the spirit plants and spirit beasts living in the area could live better. While this rainbow fog was harmless to spirit beasts, it was harmful to the human body. If a person absorbed too much of it, it would be like a thirsty person drinking seawater to become even thirstier. The spirit chi in their body would be drained away by the rainbow fog, and become less and less. General Bai and the others were in charge of hunting down the Dark Network members who had attempted to destroy the scene this time. President Qi and the others were sure that the mastermind behind this mess would definitely make a move today. At that moment, they stood on a mountain peak and looked down at the terrain of 9 Dragon Mountain. At the same time, they were using their spiritual senses to search every area, not letting go of any trace of evil. But at that moment, the Old Devil suddenly sensed something familiar. An old acquaintance has appeared. Your old acquaintance? We fought before, and my venerable self severely injured him. The Old Devil wearing the 3 circles mask said. Human Devil has also been resurrected. Human Devil? Hannibal? Chengyu, the master of Immortal Mansion, was blank. Not the man-eating Human Devil. The Old Devil frowned slightly. But this person is indeed a little difficult to deal with. He fell for my trap back then, and I found a chance to injure him. Now that he's resurrected, I'm afraid he won't repeat the mistake back then. Chapter 1148. Human Devil Xia Beimei's Chinese name was Xia Lixing. He was one of the few people the old devil had fought back then who had narrowly defeated him, but the old devil hadn't killed him back then. It was from the information in General Bai's hands that he now knew the cause of Xia Lixing's death. Xia Lixing died in the bombing of Divine Level Island, General Bai said. After listening to the old devil's description, he felt that everything made sense. After the old devil's battle with Xia Lixing back then, human devil Xia Lixing had been seriously injured, and had then fled to Divine Level Island, which was known as a paradise for soul formation cultivators, to recuperate. Later, the International Alliance of Cultivators had monitored his recuperation, and they had promptly made the decision to eradicate human devil completely at the cost of destroying Divine Level Island. Thus, Xia Lixing had died in the International Alliance of Cultivators' surprise attack on Divine Level Island. Xia Lixing's holy devil suppressing strength is particularly troublesome. By continuously devouring souls, he can increase the number of cells in his body. As far as I know, Xia Lixing had already devoured more than 25 million souls before he died. He can devour all living creatures, spirit plants, zero beasts and so on. The old devil said with a slightly nostalgic look on his face. I'm already convinced that human devil has been resurrected, so we have to get rid of him first. I also sense that there's an unusual phenomenon of spirit plants withering in the southeast. That should be human devil's appearance. Logically speaking, this shouldn't be happening with the rainbow mist around. General Bai frowned as his thoughts stirred. Thus, in a completely independent mental space, President Qi directly got in touch with General Bai. This was President Qi's spatial layering ability, which allowed all the personnel involved in this operation to establish a separate communication space with him. They didn't need to use additional magic treasures to communicate telepathically. They just needed to imagine President Qi's appearance to establish contact. For people carrying out the same mission, President Qi could even link their mental spaces together to form a local area network. In Huaxiao Nation, President Qi was currently the only one who could use this kind of powerful mental communication control technique. Although Wang Ming's mental strength was very strong, he still lacked training, and it was too easy for him to overload himself. Thus, while Wang Ming was outstanding, he still needed to concentrate on cultivating for a very long time before he could reach President Qi's level. Old Qi, I've already found traces of what looks like human devil. I hope the command center can provide assistance. Temporarily seal off the area where the demonic humans appear and guide the nearby children away. President Qi replied almost instantly, Roger that, command center, immediately set up a barrier to seal off the area. Let's go and take a look. After doing all this, General Bai's footsteps shook, and a huge flame burst out from under his feet. Like a rocket being launched, he flew with the old devil trio in the direction where human devil had appeared. On the other side, the former tranquil Nine-Dragon Mountain was now broken by the hustle and bustle of the national competition. Wang Ling and the others were teleported to a relatively remote location. Although the location was a little off, it was undoubtedly good news for the survival battle. There's no one nearby, Gu Xuanji said after sensing the surroundings. You transferred schools to study perception? Superchin was puzzled. Sort of. I'm better at perception and reasoning, Gu Xuanji said with a smile. He had already discussed it with Jin Yuan, Wang Zhen, Lu Qingyi and the others that each of them would play a role in the team. That way, each of them would play their own role, and it wouldn't be easy for them to be exposed. Gu Xuanji chose the path of perception. Lu Qingyi chose the path of wet nurse. The Lu family was a famous medical family in the domain of the gods to begin with. Jin Yuan chose to set up defensive arrays and the like. As for Wang Zhen, it was relatively simple. His job was to take a beating, or to put it bluntly, he was the MT. Gu Xuanji redetermined their direction, then led the number 60 high team forward in the jungle. The rainbow mist on Nine-Dragon Mountain will swallow up our spirit energy, and it won't dissipate until 8 o'clock in the morning. Everyone, pay attention to using the turtle breathing spell. Not only can it hide our auras, it can also prevent us from breathing in the rainbow mist. Amazing! Super-chan and Hirogwa marveled at Gu Xuanji's perception ability. Everyone's the same. There's always something we're particularly good at. Gu Xuanji played it off. Lotus Sun said at that moment. But while there are no enemies around us, our location is still too remote. It'll be very difficult for the 10 of us to last 8 days with just the supplies we brought in, and without any supplies. At that moment, Lotus Sun said, cultivators could control the consumption of energy in their bodies. In seclusion, a cultivator could go more than 10 days without eating or drinking, but it was a different story when it came to strenuous activity. Most importantly, the life-saving golden talismans tied to each of their arms actually sped up the consumption of their physical strength and abilities. Now that their consumption rate had increased, it was no different from that of ordinary people, and they had to eat 3 meals a day to maintain their physical strength. This had been deliberately arranged by the officials, so that the students participating in the competition wouldn't be able to stay in one place for long, and would have to go out in search of food. The officials have set up resource points. Our advantage is that there's no one nearby, but we're a little far from the resource points, Lotus Sun said. Resource points? Is that so? Hirogwa was puzzled. The back page of the booklet with the precautions for check-in in the room has a map of the area around 9 Dragon Mountain. And the resource points are already on it. You actually didn't see them? Lotus Sun had a helpless expression on her face. She made a hand seal, and mist gathered in the air. Lotus Sun cultivated a water spell, and wherever there was mist, she could condense it into beads, and then condense it into water. After the water screen was completed, Lotus Sun displayed the map she had obtained from the dormitory in front of everyone. Hirogwa looked at the map and analyzed it. There are a total of 20 resource points on the map, and we're 60 kilometers away from the nearest resource point. Moving forward stealthily will greatly slow us down. Even if we can arrive without being exposed in the end, there's a high chance that someone else will snatch this batch of resources first. One of my uncles once said that in guerrilla warfare like this, we have to follow these 16 words. When the enemy stops, we harass them. When the enemy is tired, we attack them. When the enemy advances, we retreat. When the enemy retreats, we pursue them. I think it's better to lie in ambush and snatch other people's resources than to go to the resource points to snatch them. As soon as Hirogwa said this, there was suddenly a violent rumble in the jungle. Gu Xuanji hurriedly sensed the direction. 10 kilometers southwest, there's a fight going on. Let's go. Let's go take a look. Lu Qingyi was a little excited. At the back of the team, Wang Ling had a helpless expression on his face. He wondered if it was really okay for Gu Xuanji and this group of people to be so serious. Chapter 1149. In the dense forest, as number 60 high approached, the noise in front of them grew louder and louder. Just as Gu Xuanji had expected, the representatives of 2 different schools were fighting. Their fists and feet collided with each other. It looked very dangerous, but in reality, they had a clear division of labor. When the 2 teams collided, they weren't going all out. They were still thinking about what to do next, and wanted to save some strength. At best, this sudden encounter was just a test of each other. It was a fight between cultivators below the foundation establishment stage, and really wasn't worth watching. Their fists and feet were too weak, and they might as well watch Yi-1, who was twice as fast. One in a flashy pink uniform, and the other in a purple uniform. What schools are they from? Hiding in the grass, Super-chan watched the fight in front of him through a crack. I'm not sure. Hirogwa shook his head. There were really too many schools participating this time, and a lot of them were from other places. Even a gossipy little expert like him would find it hard to recognize all the schools. While the 2 of them were talking softly, the main force of the 2 teams chose to stop at that moment, and the noisy jungle regained its momentary calm. The main force boy in the flashy pink uniform stepped forward. Brother, we're not using our full strength when we fight here, and it's nothing more than a waste of energy. When the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. If the other teams catch wind of this and come over to take advantage of the situation, It'll be worse for both of us. I suggest that we stop first, how about that? On the other side, the captain of the team in the purple uniform also stepped forward when he heard the suggestion. Okay, I think what you say makes sense. But since we've both decided to stop, why don't we form an alliance here? We'll support each other and try to survive the first few days. If we get separated later, we'll fight on our own. I think that's a good suggestion. Then shall we form an alliance? Let's form an alliance. May I ask which school brother is wearing this flashy pink uniform? I'm from Guangxi City West number 8 High School. You're also a student from Guangxi? So are we. We're from Purple Garden High School. So it's a fellow cultivator from Purple Garden High School. Your headmaster Zi Yan is a famous goddess in the school principal circle. Watching as the two schools who had been fighting fiercely actually started to discuss forming an alliance, Super Chin didn't quite understand how this plot was developing. They had waited here for so long with the intention of reaping the benefits of a third party. In the end, the two schools had formed an alliance. This situation was disadvantageous to them. Let me do it. At that moment, Xiaoming laughed sinisterly. Wang Ling could feel evil spirit qi twining around his fingertips. In other people's eyes, this spirit qi might look very pure, but in Wang Ling's eyes it was simply filthy. While he could indeed sense that Xiaoming was very strong, Wang Ling was well aware that this power didn't belong to him. Wang Ling was constantly thinking about helping Xiaoming break the curse. But the evil spirit qi entrenched in Xiaoming's body seemed to be more powerful than he had imagined. If it had only been on the surface before, it had now begun to corrode his insides. Just like a rotten fruit, if even the core started to rot, the situation would become extremely troublesome. Xiaoming precisely manipulated the spirit qi, which didn't belong to him, to latch onto the ankle of a Purple Garden High School student in front of him. Then, as if he was being manipulated, that student punched a girl in a flashy pink school uniform from 8th City West High School. Boom. Bam. The girl in the pink uniform was sent flying on the spot. This punch had actually directly broken through her protective golden talisman, and she crashed into several trees in the air before coming to a stop. The manipulated boy was instantly stupefied. Furthermore, the strength behind Xiaoming's punch had been so unusually strong that even the boy himself hadn't expected it. Even if he had used all his strength in a normal blow, it wouldn't have been possible for it to have such explosive power. What are you doing? Didn't we agree to form an alliance? The captain of 8th City West High School flew into a rage on the spot. He hadn't expected Purple Garden High School to actually go back on their word. It wasn't me, my body moved involuntarily. There must be a misunderstanding. The boy who had punched had a sullen and helpless expression on his face. Thus, under Xiaoming's instigation, the two schools, who had already decided to form an alliance, started fighting again. As the instigator, Xiaoming had a wicked smile on his face, as if he was very satisfied with his masterpiece. Even Super Chun and Hero Guo were horrified by this operation. Their usual impression of Xiaoming wasn't that strong. Why did it look like he was on steroids today? Xiaoming, you're so strong. Super Chun couldn't help saying. Of course. Xiaoming was immensely pleased with himself. This feeling of power made him feel very comfortable, especially when he had put on a great show in front of Lotus Sun just now, which had made him feel even more satisfied. As long as he had this power, yes. As long as he had this power, he could even help number 60 high school win first place. As long as he used this power well, and performed well in front of classmate Lotus Sun. What was Wang Ling to him? As Xiaoming fantasized about the future, his confidence grew stronger than ever. But Super Chin still persisted in asking, "Did you take drugs?" No. Xiaoming flatly denied it. Can't you think of me a little better? It's all about bringing glory to our school. Of course I miss you, but you're so strong now. I'm very puzzled. Therefore, I think there are only two possibilities. First, you've always been hiding a trump card. Either you've been hiding something, or you've been possessed by a holy devil. After Super Chun said this, Xiaoming couldn't help the cold sweat trickling down his forehead. He had long since heard that Super Chin was famous for his blessed mouth, and now that he had accidentally hit the nail on the head, All the hair on Xiaoming's body stood on end. It wasn't just Xiaoming. Even Wang Ling couldn't help sweating a few drops. Super Chen was indeed accurate. Especially when it came to random guesses. As long as it wasn't a utilitarian healer, Super Chen would almost always hit the nail on the head. As the two sides fought fiercely, number 60 High School, which had been lying in ambush for a long time, saw that both sides were pretty much exhausted. Lotus Sun immediately opened her sword spirit space and handed over the spirit swords everyone had hidden in it. And so, while the students from number 8 City West High School and Purple Garden High School were fighting to their heart's content, the number 60 High School students charged out of the grass with spirit swords in their hands. F***K. Isn't this supposed to be a body technique exchange meet? How can someone bring a spirit sword in? The captains of both schools were dumbfounded. Holding his spirit sword Ghost Tooth, Hirogwa smiled embarrassedly. If I said that we just forged it, would you believe me? Who the hell would believe that? The captains of both schools said almost in unison. Then there's nothing we can do. Hirogwa sighed. Being able to bring it in is a sign of skill. This isn't cheating. Also, I have to remind you of something. Sir, times have changed. Then, Hirogwa threw Ghost Tooth, which was shaped like a barb. The moment it was thrown, it turned into two powerful whips that swiftly swept past the two captains, snapping the big tree behind them in half. Brother, your sword isn't good either. The two captains laughed at Hirogwa. Master of Dopey withdrew Ghost Tooth, shook his index finger lightly at the two captains, and then pointed at the big tree behind them. This tree, which was so thick that it would take 5 or 6 people to wrap their arms around it, toppled over. It fell on top of the two captains' heads on the spot. Both of them had golden protective talismans activated at the same time. Chapter 1150. On the big screen in the command center, the headmasters of number 8 West City High School and Purple Garden High School flew into a rage when they saw the number 60 high students take out their spirit swords to launch a surprise attack. Qin Tianxiang, you're shameless. You actually let your students bring their spirit swords in. This kind of behavior of smuggling personal goods. I really have never seen such a shameless person. President Qi, I think number 60 high should be eliminated immediately. This isn't in line with the rules of the body technique competition at all. It's unfair. Headmaster Ziyan of Purple Garden High School also frowned as she expressed her dissatisfaction. The two headmasters got up to protest, but President Qi shook his head. It's really rare for students to cultivate a sword spirit space at the foundation establishment stage. Since number 60 high can avoid the test, it's not against the rules. Although this is a body technique competition, in the end, it's a survival environment, and the students need to adapt to the situation and act according to the situation. As long as they use magic reasonably and even collect resources reasonably during the competition, it won't be against the rules. The meaning of President Qi's words was already very clear. Act according to the situation. To put it bluntly, as long as they could avoid the test at the very beginning, no one would say anything even if they took out some earth-shattering magic treasure during the competition. Although it was a body technique competition, in the end, it was also a battle for survival. People who were too well-behaved wouldn't survive in this environment. Many of the headmasters present also agreed with President Qi's words. That's right. President Qi is right. I also agree with President Qi. Being able to bring them in is a testament to their own ability. It's not unfair. The corner of Headmaster Ziyan's mouth twitched at these words. When all was said and done, she and the headmaster of West City High School were still a little too well behaved. Seeing how much this group of people agreed with President Qi, it was obvious that these people had also thought of some way to let their students bring in their own goods. Otherwise, why would they be so protective? Thus, the two schools could only admit that they were out of luck. Fortunately, the students from the two schools weren't completely wiped out in this round of ambush. Of the 20 students from number 8 West City High School and Purple Garden High School, 4 had managed to escape in the end. Number 60 High School didn't pursue them. It was only the first day, so there was no need to kill him directly. It was better to leave some face. Moreover, there were only 4 people left from the two schools, and they were already at the end of their rope. Even if they did not make a move, they might not be able to survive the next 7 days. Although they had won this battle, the people from number 60 high school didn't feel like they had participated in it at all. The main reason was that the two schools had already used up some of their physical strength in the earlier fight. They had chosen the perfect time to launch their sneak attack, and their victory was practically set in stone. Wang Ling, on the other hand, had been slacking off the whole time and didn't have much of a sense of participation. He carefully avoided the attacks in order to avoid the backlash from hitting this group of students. The life-saving effect of the golden light shield was ineffective. Wang Ling's backlash was so strong that it was at least 100 times stronger when he was under control. That was to say, if a fist hit him, the backlash would completely activate the golden protective talisman and directly shatter its protective shield. It was too difficult for him. He couldn't directly deal a heavy blow and had to think of a way to avoid the attacks. As a result, he hadn't taken the initiative to attack the whole time and had instead been constantly dodging attacks. But the truth was that Wang Ling had also done some extra support in the battle. For example, it looked like Hirogua had cut down the tree with Ghost Tooth, but it was actually Wang Ling who had knocked it down. There was nothing he could do about it. As a person who had all the good qualities of a socialist core, Wang Ling had always understood the principle of turning into spring mud to protect the flowers. There was nothing wrong with being a supporting character. The main thing was that Wang Ling's performance couldn't be too outstanding due to the Wang family's teachings. We have to choose a place to set up camp before sunset. After beating off the students from the two schools, Lotus Sun calmed down and analyzed the map again. They had to be particular about where to set up camp. If they were too high up, they would be easily surrounded. If they chose a place like a cliff, they could avoid the attacks of spirit insects and spirit beasts. But if they were surrounded, they really had no choice but to jump off the cliff. Thus, they had to find a place with food, water, and a relatively abundant supply of spirit plants. As long as there were spirit plants, Lotus Sun could make some simple elixirs to drive away insects or even spirit beasts. She was from Huagua Water Curtain Group and was their future successor. There was no way she would do something that would bring shame to her family in this national competition. As long as there were enough spirit plants, Lotus Sun would have a lot of room to shine. But where to choose was another problem. The reason why Jiulong Mountain was called Jiulong Mountain was because of its topography. Jiulong Mountain was surrounded by 9 peaks that were shaped like a dragon's claw. They faced the huge dome in the middle, which was the main peak of the mountain. In fact, there were 10 mountains on 9 Dragon Mountain, and the main peak naturally had the most resources. But it was very likely that a lot of people were fighting over it, and Wang Ling and the others were too far away. If they rushed over now, it was very likely that they would already lose the initiative. If they wanted to take it back, they would have to think about it at length. So now, the number 60 high team could only choose the Dragon Claw Peak closest to them, and fight for a place with relatively abundant resources first. 9 Dragon Mountain Fire Peak. After analyzing the map, Lotus Sun gave her suggestion. Fire Peak was one of the Dragon Claw Peaks on 9 Dragon Mountain, and had a tropical environment. Although it was relatively hot, it was abundant in resources, and most importantly, it wasn't far from their current position. Apart from that, there was a supply point on the edge of Fire Peak. Looking at the current map, there was already no better place than Fire Peak. Of course, they couldn't rule out the possibility that a school was already stationed there. After some discussion, they decided to fight for Fire Peak first. Using the turtle breathing spell to hurry along would greatly reduce their speed. So Lotus Sun thought of an excellent idea. She used Mysterious Sea's power to combine everyone's spirit energy, which finally turned into a huge turtle shell to protect everyone inside. This is the Blue Sea Turtle Shell technique. Breathing inside the turtle shell won't expose your aura, and it's the same effect as the turtle breathing spell, Lotus Sun explained. Although Lotus Sun knew this spell, if it wasn't for everyone's spirit energy, their endurance would be worrisome. Now it was like 10 people driving a train, lending their spirit energy to Mysterious Sea to use this spell together. Thus, this created a problem. Mysterious Sea realized that Wang Ling was really too powerful. As a sword spirit, This was the first time in her life that she had felt such majestic spirit energy, and she instantly wanted to sing in her heart. "Don't come over. I can't take it anymore." Chapter 1151. As they approached Fire Peak, the terrain finally opened up a little, and Wang Ling saw the huge number displayed on the domed main peak. Survivors remaining, 759. This was the current number of survivors. In less than 4 hours, a group of people had already been eliminated. Wang Ling speculated that there would be 2 peaks in the entire competition. The first peak would be on the first and second days, when everyone was fighting for territory. After the situation calmed down in the next few days, most of the school teams would adopt defensive tactics, and the second peak would be on the 7th and 8th days of the competition. In order to determine the winner, everyone would have to fight to the death. And when the time came, the officials would definitely step in to control the situation, such as deliberately guiding powerful spirit beasts to drive people away from where they had set up camp. In addition to protecting the students' lives, the teachers in charge of safety were in fact also responsible for guiding the students. This was the same routine in the national competition. Using powerful spirit beasts to drive people away was essentially no different from the shrinking circle that had been used in the 6 schools' military training. But there was a big prerequisite to using spirit beasts to drive people away, and that was that the spirit beasts had to be strong enough to be a deterrent along the way. Wang Ling did his best to hide his aura, but the natural aura he exuded made the spirit beasts in the nearby jungle completely afraid to approach him. It wasn't just spirit beasts. Even snakes, insects, rats and ants were anxious to flee when they sensed Wang Ling's aura. Coupled with Wang Zhen, Lu Qingyi, Gu Xuanji, Zhen Yuan and Fang Xing, the 6 of them in number 60 High's team were like walking demon-repellent incense. And as they walked through the jungle, a swarm of flying insects and ferocious beasts trembled in fear. At first, Lotus Sun had been very cautious as she walked, for fear that she would make too much noise and alarm some nearby vicious beasts. However, she never expected that Wang Ling would scare them away. Furthermore, they hadn't run into any other opponents on the way, which directly made the whole process so easy that it almost made people wonder if they had joined a fake survival game. "I think we're going to starve to death today. We've been walking for so long. Why haven't we run into a single monkey?" Master of Dopey used his sword to push aside the bushes in front of him. At first he had been very cautious, but his movements gradually became rough. "There's not even a single bird, let alone a monkey." In the team, Li Yue was also surprised. Logically speaking, the vicinity of Fire Peak was rich in resources. It was impossible that they had not encountered a single spirit beast. Today, she had planned to show off her superb cooking skills in the wild kitchen, but it seemed that she was not given this opportunity. In fact, their words had undoubtedly reminded him of something. It was a strange sight to see that there were no spirit beasts blocking their way. Although his original intention had been to keep a low profile, since he had decided to put on an act, he had to go through with it to the end. He amplified his spiritual will, and a message was immediately transmitted to Ajua's ears in the command center. "Not good. Shifu is in trouble." Ajua received the message and understood Wang Ling's predicament. But it wasn't good for him to directly intervene in this matter. Now that Old Huang, President Qi and many headmasters were here, it would be too brazen for him to directly take action. Fortunately, Ajua was already prepared. He took out his phone and sent a shaking window to a new chat group called Group Pet Ling Jinren's Reserve Squad. Buttface asked, "What happened?" "Little Silver. What happened to Master?" "Ajua. Shifu's aura is too strong, and all the spirit beasts in the jungle nearby have been scared away. We have to think of a way." Buttface. "Got it. We just need to find a group of people to put on a show." Little Silver. "Then leave it to me." Ajua nodded and then sent a reminder. "When the 2 of you make a move, pay attention to coordination. It wasn't easy for me to assign you to the guard team. It wouldn't be good if you were discovered." "Understood." 1 Silver and 1 Dog nodded. Little Silver and Loopy Toad had come to 9 Dragon Mountain with grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, which even Wang Ling didn't know about. Ajua had already anticipated that something unexpected might happen, So he had arranged for Little Silver and Loopy Toad to be part of the guard team in advance. Now that Loopy Toad could take human form, it would naturally be much easier for it to sneak into the team. After receiving the message, one Silver and one Dog immediately got to work. Msader is currently near Fire Peak. On a mountain peak, Little Silver used his spiritual senses to sense the creatures there. And sure enough, they were running around in chaos. As expected, it's very chaotic. Loopy Toad nodded and sighed in its heart. Spirit beasts had a natural sense of danger, which was a little similar to a human's sixth sense, and was sometimes even more accurate than that. Thus, Wang Ling might not have revealed his aura, but when he walked through the forest, the domineering aura that he exuded was that of a primordial vicious beast. But it actually wasn't that troublesome to deal with. Little Silver and Loopy Toad appeared at the mouth of a hidden cave. Little Silver then bit his finger and dripped his holy beast essence blood on the ground. Will that work? Loopy Toad was doubtful. My holy beast essence blood is naturally attractive, don't you think? Little Silver raised his eyebrows. At the mention of Little Silver's essence blood, Loopy Toad instinctively wanted to throw up. In order to heal it and transform its demon physique as quickly as possible, Little Masterling had fed it basin after basin of holy beast essence blood, which had already left a psychological shadow on Loopy Toad. No matter how delicious the delicacies were, if you ate too much, you would eventually throw up. It was the same with holy beast essence blood. But for spirit beasts who had never drunk holy beast essence blood before, Little Silver's blood indeed had a natural attraction. In a short while, Little Silver could smell the restless spirit beasts in the jungle. For a moment, it was as if the whole jungle had come back to life. Startled, countless birds circled in the sky, unexpectedly forming a strange phenomenon of a bird tide. It was just a drop of holy beast essence blood, but it had actually caused such a violent disturbance. Although Loopy Toad could already foresee what would happen, the scene in front of it still couldn't help feeling a little shaken. It recalled the scene of the demon tide back then, which was a little similar to it. Can you feel it there here? To catch bandits, first catch the king. Start with the king of the spirit beasts, but be careful not to kill them all. Just scaring him a little will do. That's right, and we have to catch them all alive. Got it, we have to send them to Master as extras. We can't hurt them. But then again, it's best if we can pay them. Then half a drop of holy beast blood for each king. It's a sure win. Chapter 1152. The fatal attraction of the holy beast's blood caused a stir in the jungle, and several huge spirit beasts near Fire Peak were alarmed. This smell. A giant ape king with 2 arms wreathed in spirit fire licked its thick lips. It was already drooling, as if it had smelled a 1,000-year-old honey peach. A second-class giant flaming arm ape king, a second-class blood claw python king, dozens of third-class spirit beasts, and hundreds of fourth-class and fifth-class spirit beasts. Loopy Toad sensed the changes in the jungle. As long as it could control these spirit beasts, it would be enough to put on an act. Little Silver and Loopy Toad working together could easily deal with these spirit beasts. The second-class Ape King and Python King that had been the first to rush over were subdued on the spot. Loopy Toad used the Python King's body, which was tens of meters long, as a rope to tie it up tightly. Exalted Immortal, spare us. The 2 second-class spirit beasts were completely stupefied. They never expected a holy beast and a quasi-holy beast to appear here. Furthermore, one of the quasi-holy beasts was a King green-furred Akita that had taken human form. It had to be known that they had been cultivating for 1,000 years, but had yet to reach the stage where they could take human form. 10 minutes later, everyone from number 60 high saw birds circling in the jungle in front of them and 10,000 beasts scurrying about. The numerous spirit beasts led by the second-class Ape King and Python King ran around Wang Ling. They weren't in the mood to fight, and were purely going through the motions. Wang Ling knew that this group of spirit beasts had to have been arranged by Little Silver and Loopy Toad. He had smelled Little Silver's holy beast blood earlier, and now he had run into this group of spirit beasts that shouldn't have been in the area. Now they were suddenly running around one after another, and he instantly understood the situation in front of him. It was very obvious that Little Silver and Loopy Toad had forced this group of spirit beasts to act as extras. Wang Ling sighed in his heart at how hard it was for them to act as extras. They were running around randomly, and they had to keep their numbers in check. If they all rushed over in a swarm, it was very likely that the area would be judged to be at risk of a beast tide. There was a beast tide on Nine Dragon Mountain from time to time, but the average probability of it happening was about once every 3 months. It was extremely dangerous to travel through a beast tide, and the command center would definitely send people to investigate the cause of the beast tide. If that was the case, then there was no need for it at all. Fortunately, under Little Silver's and Loopy Toad's directions, these spirit beasts moved in an orderly manner and didn't raise any suspicions in the command center. The number of spirit beasts in the surroundings gradually increased, and the originally boring jungle exploration finally seemed a little more interesting. In fact, it didn't matter if there weren't any spirit beasts around them. They survived by eating spirit fruits and berries in the forest. But in that situation just now, there hadn't been any spirit beasts around them at all, so it seemed a little fake. After another half an hour or so, everyone from number 60 High successfully reached Fire Peak. To their pleasant surprise, there were no signs of a camp yet. In other words, number 60 High was the first to arrive. We're actually the first? Super Chin felt a little incredulous. The Ape King and Python King, who were running through the jungle, felt bitter inside. Under Little Silver and Loopy Toad's coercion, apart from agreeing to help put on a show, they had also taken on the job of interfering with the competition. They each sent out a lot of little apes and pythons from their caves to interfere with the other teams planning to station at Fire Peak. Thus, when the people from number 60 High School arrived, Fire Peak was very clean. On the other side, with the cooperation of the command center, General Bai led the mahjong players into the area where human devil Xiao Lixing was suspected to be active. There were no students in this area. They had all been driven away by the instructors in the jungle. Human devil is here. The old devil stared at the traces of withered spirit plants on the ground. Only Xiao Lixing had the terrifying ability to wantonly snatch away life. As they moved forward, they felt the power of death and withering that human devil brought with him. General Bai gazed at the footprints on the ground, each of which carried a deathly stillness. This was where human devil had walked. If you walked on these footprints again, the cells in your body would instantly wither and die, as if they had been exposed to radiation. He's stronger. The old devil stared at the footprints on the ground, and couldn't help looking worried under his mask. How is it compared to your previous fight? General Bai asked. It's very tricky. The old devil shook his head slightly and said bluntly, when we fought back then, it was only the places he touched that would wither and grow old. Now this widespread decay just proves that Xiao Lixing's holy demon suppressing strength is gradually reaching great success, and is close to perfection. Suddenly, the old devil's expression turned increasingly frightened. Not good. What did you think of? The holy demon suppressing strength can help him absorb the souls of all living things and devour their cells. There are natural phenomena on Nine Dragon Mountain every day, such as the rainbow mist. If this person devours all living things on Nine Dragon Mountain, and then uses the natural phenomena on Nine Dragon Mountain to wait for all living things to recover before finally devouring them. In this way, it'll go on and on. When the old devil said this, everyone present shuddered a little. If this was really the case, then this would be the legendary perpetual motion machine, devouring all living things that he had already devoured. General Bai really hadn't thought of this before. We have to get rid of human devil Xiao Lixing as soon as possible. General Bai was now well aware of the seriousness of the situation. Although this area had already been sealed off, human devil Xiao Lixing had already become their top priority. What was worse was that they hadn't found any traces of human devil after coming here. This was an absolutely cunning enemy. If they didn't get rid of him, they were afraid that things would change. General Bai contacted the command center again. Calling the command center, we haven't found any trace of human devil Xiao Lixing. Requesting a new location. The truth was that at that moment, a black shadow was quietly following Wang Ling. After human devil's revival, He urgently needed a young and vigorous body to replenish himself. And the people Xiao Lixing was targeting were none other than the 10 people from number 60 high school. To be precise, his main target was Wang Ling. For some reason, Xiao Lixing felt that the aura of this dead fish-eyed teenager's body was exceptionally delicious, and far surpassed that of his peers. Although they were all of the same age here, there was still a fundamental difference between their bodies. As a young man who had developed morally, intellectually, physically, and aesthetically, the reason why Wang Ling's flesh was so good was very simple. It was because Wang Ling slept early and got up early, didn't drink beverages, and never stayed up late. Chapter 1153. Human Devil. Xiao Lixing indeed lived up to his reputation. The highest realm of devour everything wasn't to devour, but to fuse with everything. When the holy devil suppressing strength was cultivated to the extreme, Xiao Lixing could easily turn himself into a shadow and lurk in the shadows of all living things, waiting for the right moment to strike. This kind of covert action was usually hard to detect. But it was usually the case. The truth was that Wang Ling had noticed Xiao Lixing the moment he set his sights on number 60 high. It was just that he didn't know that the person following him was the legendary human devil Xiao Lixing. After all, Wang Ling hadn't been born when Xiao Lixing had stirred up trouble in the world back then. But times had changed, and the present was different. Who could have thought that one day, a baby who was invincible from birth would appear in the world? Furthermore, the parents of this family were crazy enough to prepare for a second child. In fact, it wasn't just Wang Ling who had noticed Xiao Lixing. Fang Xing, Wang Zhen, Lu Qingyi, Gu Xuanji and Jin Yuan had also noticed him. But seeing that Wang Ling wasn't moving, they weren't in a hurry to make a move. In the next moment, they communicated with each other in a mental space constructed from their thoughts. I sense malice behind me. Should we think of a way to get rid of it? Wang Zhen asked. He was used to being beaten up by his parents since he was young, so he was especially sensitive to malice. He knew as soon as Xiao Lixing appeared, and he quickly thought of a countermeasure. For a spell like Xiao Lixing's, which relied on devouring to strengthen itself, ordinary attacks were definitely ineffective. They had to be used in conjunction with a mental attack, to inflict serious damage to its soul. But Ling Zhenren hasn't made a move yet. I think we shouldn't worry about it for now. In any case, this person isn't much of a threat. He's just an annoying mosquito. Lu Qingyi shook her head slightly. Devouring spells might seem tricky, but in fact, in the upper world of the domain of the gods, this kind of spell was child's play. Nowadays, cultivators who used the devouring spell to strengthen themselves mostly had unstable foundations, were strong on the outside but weak on the inside, and couldn't withstand a single blow. I also think that Ling Zhenren definitely has a deeper reason for not making a move. Why don't we leave him alone and observe him for now? Jin Yuan also nodded and expressed his opinion in the mental chat space. My Crimson Flame Ruler Mirror is miraculously effective against this type of demonic spell. If necessary, it can directly wipe this devil off the map without leaving the slightest trace. There's no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Don't worry, Immortal. I just checked the Heavenly Dao list and discovered that Xiao Lixing is on the Heavenly Dao wanted list. Since he would soon be punished by the Heavenly Dao for harming living beings, it didn't matter if he was left alone. He'll disappear sooner or later, Gu Xuanji added at this moment. He was the keeper of order in the universe and knew the names of every evil person. Even though Xiao Lixing's criminal index was very high in this world, he wasn't even in the top 100 on the Heavenly Law wanted list. Thus, when Gu Xuanji found out the human demon Xiao Lixing's wanted index, he instantly lost interest in Xiao Lixing. He was just an ant that could be crushed at any time. How could he be more important than the match before him? On the other side, Xiao Lixing also felt very confused. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling that something was off. He felt like he had already been discovered. But these people in front of him were just students from a high school cultivation school. Xiao Lixing really didn't believe that he had already been discovered. They were just a bunch of foundation establishment cultivators. How could they possibly discover him? It had to be an illusion. He was extremely confident in the holy devil suppressing strength, and logically speaking, It was unlikely that he would be discovered in such a well-hidden environment. But now, Xiao Lixing was a little doubtful about his actions. Thus, he didn't make a move right away, but planned to observe for a while longer. Then the scene became very strange. At that moment, 6 people in number 60 high knew of Xiao Lixing's existence. But as a grand human demon, Xiao Lixing didn't know that he was already being watched by 6 people. As evening approached, number 60 high occupied a pretty good position on Fire Peak. Wang Ling, Hero Guo, Super Chen and Xia Ming were in charge of cutting down trees and gathering wood to set up a temporary camp. Li Yuyue and Lu Qingyi were in charge of starting a fire and cooking. Wang Zhen, Gu Xuanji, Jin Yuan and Fang Xing were in charge of gathering spirit plants and hunting. Hunting was not a difficult task for them. Furthermore, given that Little Silver and Loopy Toad had given the go-ahead, the second-class Python King and the second-class Ape King from earlier were also in charge of helping hunt in the jungle and then sacrificing their prey to number 60 high. Thus, number 60 high's food that night was exceptionally rich. In addition to the spirit fruits and berries they had gathered on Nine Dragon Mountain, Wang Zhen and the others also caught a wild 4th-class flame yak, which was enough for the 10 of them to eat. 4th class? How did you catch it? Li Yue felt it was inconceivable. She had thought that catching a few pheasants would already be amazing enough. They could actually eat beef on the first day of the survival battle. It wasn't that hard. We hadn't even taken a few steps when we saw this guy already lying on the side, on his last breath. To end Brother Yak's pain, I went up and stabbed him, said Wang Zhen. Li Yue. On the other side, the camp had already been set up. Wang Ling actually hadn't helped much, since Super Chen and Hero Guo had been too enthusiastic. After cutting down the trees, they had used their spirit swords to cut the trunks into long strips, and then carefully shaved off the rough bark. The bark was very dry and could also be used for living. They then gathered a lot of banana leaves to cover the top of the tents. Just like that, 2 temporary tents were set up, one for boys and one for girls. This really is a real-life version of Minecraft. Exciting. Super Chen's forehead was covered in sweat, but it was hard to hide his excitement. After the 2 tents were set up, everyone looked at the huge numbers projected above the domed mountain peak. Survivors remaining: 678. Another 70 people had been eliminated. Tonight, 2 people will patrol the sentry posts, and will change shifts every hour. After giving instructions, Lotus Sun started to use some of the spirit plants Wang Zhen had gathered to make medicine. Don't you need tools? Wang Zhen asked. Of course. After saying that, Lotus Sun opened Mysterious C's sword spirit space and took out a luxurious multifunctional automatic pill-making machine. This was a machine designed purely for dummies. You just needed to pour spirit plants and herbs into the machine, and it would automatically filter them and then quickly turn them into pills according to your needs. It was much more convenient than using an alchemy furnace. Furthermore, this automatic pill-making machine was exclusive to Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Is that even possible? Everyone was stupefied. The headmasters in the command center were also collectively astonished. Didn't you say that being able to bring in something means you have the ability, and it doesn't count as cheating? Lotus Sun smiled shyly. In fact, there was a compressed luxury villa capsule in her sword spirit space. She just needed to throw it on the ground, and a villa would be built in an instant. But on second thought, she felt that her operation might be a little overboard and destroy the game's balance. So in the end, she didn't take it out. But in essence, as long as Wang Ling was around, number 60 high school, this balance would always be broken. Chapter 1154. At night, the temperature on Nine Dragon Mountain plummeted. Standing at the top of Fire Peak and looking into the distance, Wang Ling saw that a lot of places were actually frozen over and even snowing. It was a completely different world from Fire Peak. Fire Peak was surrounded by a tropical climate. It was extremely hot during the day, but just right at night. So in theory, Fire Peak was an ideal place to set up camp. But the people from number 60 high school never expected that after they set up camp here for so long, no one would come to fight them for territory. The plummeting temperature in the distance blended with the warm air here. and the temperature difference instantly created a large white mist around Nine Dragon Mountain. It was like a song of ice and fire. It was more dangerous to act at night than during the day, but the truth was that as long as one was good at using the white mist as cover, the success rate of a sneak attack would greatly increase. So Wang Ling was wondering if someone was going to take advantage of this opportunity to launch a night attack on them. But whether or not there was a night attack, Wang Ling didn't care at all about the attack itself. To him, this competition was just a game to pass the time. He didn't take it seriously, nor did he intend to use his spiritual senses to spy on the enemy. He would just let nature take its course. At that moment, there was a violent whistling sound as Wang Ling felt something heavy fall on the back of his head, followed by the crisp sound of a collision. Someone was sneaking up on him. But Wang Ling had already sensed this person's presence earlier on. Wang Ling had thought that he might be able to trigger the golden talisman's life-saving effect with this blow, fall down, and wait for the teachers to rescue him before leaving the competition as soon as possible. But unfortunately, because that light blow just now was far from fatal to Wang Ling, the fatal effect hadn't been triggered. The person who had attacked Wang Ling was none other than Zhu Hanyun, the team leader of Titan High School. This was a precise blow aimed at the back of Wang Ling's head. Judging from the strength of the swing, it should have been enough to trigger the golden talisman's fatal judgment without the other party noticing. But Wang Ling just scratched his head without any movement. Behind him, Zhu Hanyun was stupefied and instantly on guard. This person. There was something wrong. Zhu Hanyun was extremely astonished as he thought this. When he had hit Wang Ling with the oar just now, not only had Wang Ling not been injured, Zhu Hanyun's own hand had gone numb. Retreat. In a moment of desperation, Zhu Hanyun used the sound transmission spell to send a signal, and Titan High School, which had been preparing to besiege number 60 High School, immediately withdrew from the front line. The truth was that at the foot of Fire Peak, several high schools had already joined hands to encircle and annihilate number 60 High. Titan High had been sent out as the vanguard, but they hadn't expected to receive Zhu Hanyun's order to retreat not long after they went up. Titan High School, South Sea Sky High School, Northern Fist High School, and West Leg Tyrant High School formed a temporary cultivation school alliance to inquire about the situation. What happened? Senior brother is injured. Titan High's junior sister Yin Xiaochun helped Zhu Hanyun down from Nine Dragon Mountain. How did it happen? South Sea Sky High immediately sent a medical student over to check on Zhu Hanyun's injuries. Right arm, fractured bone. You need to quickly bandage it and stabilize it. Otherwise, there might be repercussions. Fractured bone. Nan Ishio, the squadron leader of South Sea Sky, frowned deeply. Zhu Hanyun's body was extremely dense. For such a physique to show signs of bone fractures, it was most likely due to some kind of violent impact. But the problem was that from the foot of the mountain, they had been keeping a close eye on what was going on up there, but there hadn't been any movement at all up there, so the question was, where had the injury on Zhu Hanyun's arm come from? At that moment, Zhu Hanyun's face was red with shame, and he naturally didn't want to say more about what had just happened. Even if he did, he didn't intend to tell the truth. He had picked up an or to sneak up on someone else, and had even smashed the back of the head, which was a fatal and fragile part. In the end, not only had the other party not been injured, he had even suffered a fracture. What an extraordinary shame and humiliation. The other party is very dangerous. Helpless, Zhu Hanyun could only exaggerate to highlight number 60 High's strength. I wanted to launch a sneak attack, but the other party saw through it. The other party was already prepared, and used a very strange defensive spell to cause my strength to rebound. And then I became like this. The other party was prepared? Hearing this, Nan Etian frowned deeply. It seemed that number 60 High's team also had a perception-type player. Not only had he predicted the night attack in advance, but he had also made preparations in advance. If it really was as Zhu Hanyun said, that the other party could predict and set up a defensive spell in advance to counteract Zhu Hanyun's attack, Nan Ishio could only think of the reverse armor spell. But given Zhu Hanyun's physique, even if he had been hit by the reverse armor spell, he might not have suffered a fracture. Unless he had cultivated this reverse armor spell to an extremely high level, which was at least level 7 or level 8. They were all foundation establishment students. Nan Ishio found it inconceivable that someone could cultivate the reverse armor art, an unorthodox magic spell that wasn't part of his main curriculum, to such a high level. He never thought that the plan to encircle and annihilate number 60 high would actually fail in the first round. But Fire Peak was a very important stronghold, and the 4 great high schools had to work together to take down this bone. Don't send anyone up there for the time being. It's best if we use some tricks to force them down the mountain. Set a fire? Someone suggested. Set a mountain on fire and you'll die in prison. Of course we can't set a mountain fire so casually, but 9 Dragon Mountain's terrain is special. The rainbow mist in the morning can repair the vegetation and extinguish the fire, so it shouldn't be a big problem. But the main reason we're fighting for Fire Peak with number 60 high is for resources. It takes time for the rainbow mist to repair the vegetation. If we set a fire to seize the territory, it'll be meaningless if we burn all the spirit plants here. We have to think of another way, said Nan Ishio. Elsewhere, at number 60 high's camp on the mountaintop, Gu Xuanji had long since noticed what was going on at the foot of the mountain. Despite the thick fog, this level of fog was useless against him. 40 people are underground. Gu Xuanji used a branch to draw a map of the situation at the foot of the mountain. Students from 4 cultivation high schools were restlessly watching number 60 high's camp from underground. Are we surrounded? Super Chun and Hirogwa frowned. For the time being, they hadn't found a way out. A few minutes later, countless hellfire actually appeared below them. The other party used the spirit summoning spell. Super Chun immediately identified the origin of this spell, because this was the first thing they had learned in Teacher Pan's Tao Talismans class in the first semester. It was also in that Tao Talismans class that he had used this spell. He summoned Loopy Toad's remnant soul. Chapter 1155. As the saying went, the Great Tao was the simplest. As a compulsory course in the first semester of Foundation Establishment Cultivation High Schools, the spirit summoning spell was self-evident in its importance. Wang Ling had accidentally summoned Loopy Toad back then, and now that he saw the spirit summoning spell again, he suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. Now that they were being besieged by 4 high schools, and Zhu Hanyun as the vanguard had failed, Nan Ishio had immediately thought of using the spirit summoning spell as a joint encirclement and suppression method. There were over 40 people in total from the 4 high schools, and if they used the spirit summoning spell together, they could summon no fewer than several hundred spirits. Even if they couldn't hurt number 60 high with these spirits as the vanguard, it was more than enough to break through the enemy's formation. Furthermore, as a basic spell, the spirit summoning spell didn't consume much energy to begin with. After repeated summoning, the number of spirits became very large. When these colorful spiritual bodies surrounded them from the foot of the mountain, it still gave people a shocking déjà vu feeling like they were in a sci-fi blockbuster. Julong Mountain. As a modern national natural spirit plant and spirit beast reserve, the spirits that could be summoned here were naturally not weak. The weakest spirit that could be summoned here was at least a level 6 spirit beast. Although Zhu Hanyun had lost an arm, it did not affect him from summoning a spirit with his other arm. He summoned a level 4 3-headed fire lion. For a Foundation Establishment cultivator, being able to summon a 4th-class spirit was already very astonishing. It could only be said that Zhu Hanyun was worthy of being the team leader of Titan High School. Although his vanguard operation had failed, it still couldn't hide his excellence. As expected of Captain Zhu, as the vanguard of the army of spirits, this 4th-class 3-headed fire lion will definitely scatter number 60 high's formation. Seeing the results of everyone's spirit summoning, Nan Ishio felt that the situation was basically stable. Although the spirits that were summoned definitely wouldn't be as strong as the real bodies, and would only have 20% of their fighting strength, they should be more than enough to deal with number 60 high on the mountain. The 4 high schools were now in an alliance, and it was understandable for them to boast about each other's businesses. But for some reason Zhu Hanyun, who had already experienced the strangeness of number 60 high school, wasn't happy at all when he heard Nan Ishio's boast. He felt that no 60 High was full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons this time, and that the whole school might have been underestimated. Before participating in the competition, Zhu Hanyun vaguely recalled what their headmaster, Lu Tian, had told them to never look down on other schools, especially number 60 High. Now that Zhu Hanyun recalled the principal's instructions, he suddenly felt the depth of it. The 4 high schools were now working together to besiege number 60 High, and they had the advantage in numbers, which indeed seemed to be advantageous. But number 60 High had already established a foothold on the mountain and had successfully set up camp. If they were to adopt a defensive strategy and then make a surprise move, the outcome would be very unpredictable. Although they had the advantage in numbers, having more people was also a disadvantage. In a situation where they didn't have the geographical advantage, they couldn't effectively integrate their resources. Once they fell into a protracted battle, it would be disadvantageous to them. On the other side, at the top of the mountain, number 60 High's team swiftly came up with a strategy in the face of the spirit bodies that were gradually closing in on them. In a situation where they already occupied the geographical advantage, they would naturally choose to defend. Furthermore, because of Ohai, number 60 High wasn't worried about the people at the foot of the mountain cutting off their water supply. Ohai was very powerful. As long as they needed to, he could use the south-north water diversion to open up a path and lead the nearby river to their feet. The truth was that the moment these spirit bodies appeared, Gu Xuanji had already thought of 16,020 ways to eliminate them all in an instant. But the problem was that he would expose his true strength. After all, their purpose in coming to number 60 High was to learn how to keep a low profile from Wang Ling. They're using the spirit summoning spell, so we should do the same, Super Chen suggested at that moment. Everyone knew how to summon spirits. In this case, it was nothing more than a matter of luck. Given that their spirit energy levels were about the same, Zhu Hanyun had been able to summon a 4th-class 3-headed fire lion, and Super Chen felt that he could summon one of similar quality, Gu Xuanji, using the spirit summoning spell as well. Actually, it wasn't impossible. But the problem was that Gu Xuanji, Wang Zhen and the others were well aware that if they used this strategy, it would also be risky. They could control their strength, and it wouldn't be a problem at all for them to accurately summon a spirit. But who knew what terrible thing their Lingzhenren would summon? Then it's settled. I'll go first. As the team leader, Lotus Sun bravely raised her hand. She swiftly made a hand seal, gathered spirit energy in her palm, and then slapped it hard on the ground. As the spirit summoning array swiftly lit up on the ground, a huge pure white flower came into view. What's this? It looks like the snow hibiscus of 9 Dragon Mountain's ice peak. A 4th-class spirit plant has a certain level of spiritual intelligence. As expected of Captain Lotus Sun, Super Chun and the others exclaimed in admiration. Then, everyone began to summon spirits one after another. The spirit body that Master of Dopey summoned this time was a huge sky-capturing spirit elephant. Although it was big, it was too cumbersome and wasn't very agile. Furthermore, it was a 6th-class spirit elephant, and its overall fighting strength wasn't that great. AI, that's too much. Hirogwa sighed. The thing he had summoned in class last time hadn't been outstanding, so he had secretly practiced the spirit summoning spell for a long time after he went back. In the end, he had dropped the ball again in the official competition. Sometimes a competition depends on luck. You might not be a competition player. When it was Xiaoming's turn, he sneered softly and was full of confidence in his spirit summoning spell. He had obtained a special power from that mysterious white-haired youngster, so the thing he could summon would naturally be unparalleled. This time, he had to put on a good show in front of Lotus Sun. Thinking this, Xiaoming started to make hand seals. The whole process was as smooth as flowing water. Then, what everyone didn't expect was, when Xiaoming's palm slapped the ground to activate the spirit summoning array, a huge array appeared in front of everyone's eyes. What was going on? The people at the foot of the mountain were dumbfounded. This spirit summoning array was so huge that it could be said to be rare. It actually burst through the entire body of Fire Peak, and was wrapped around the mountainside like a hula hoop. Xiaoming himself was taken aback by the scale of the array. He had just wanted to show off in front of the girl he liked, but the situation in front of him seemed to have exceeded his expectations. Boom. With a resounding boom, a giant lava hand the size of a mountain gushed out of the huge spirit summoning array. Chapter 1156. Fire Peak's Mountain Spirit. No one knew exactly what had happened, and Xiaoming, the culprit, was dumbfounded. The mountain spirit of Fire Peak was a super first-class nature creature, and was much more powerful than spirit beasts. Xiaoming never thought that he would actually be able to directly summon the mountain spirit with the most basic, spirit summoning spell. At that moment, everyone at the foot of the mountain was completely stupefied as they stared at the giant hand of molten salt stretching out of the mountain peak. What the hell, what's that? Is it a mountain spirit? How can a foundation establishment student summon a mountain spirit? Even if Grandpa Lu reincarnated, this cheat is outrageous. Retreat. Retreat. Everyone, keep your distance. Nan Ishio was a perception-type student, and had been observing the activity on the mountain the whole time. The moment the mountain spirit appeared, his head buzzed and exploded on the spot. He split open. At the same time, many screens in the command center flashed, and all the headmasters stood up in shock as they stared at the images on the screens. This is a mountain spirit? Can the spirit summoning spell summon a mountain spirit? In theory, yes, but it's only a small probability. Is it a freak accident that a foundation establishment cultivator can summon a mountain spirit? Let's not worry about that for now. Saving people is more important. What about these students? A headmaster cried out in alarm. This could be said to be a wake-up call. The mountain spirit had appeared, and its palm was like the wrath of nature. Foundation establishment cultivators were far from being able to resist it. Although this kind of natural creature would awaken every year, it usually wouldn't show up in its true form. Earthquakes, tsunamis, mudslides. In fact, most of these natural disasters were signs that the mountain spirit had awakened. When human activities disturbed the tranquility of nature, the mountain spirit would awaken. It went without saying how powerful they were. Sometimes just turning over or yawning could cause great damage. This kind of power was also known as the power of nature. At the same time, however, mountain spirits were shy creatures, and their true forms were rarely exposed to human cultivators. Some mountain spirits could sleep for hundreds or even thousands of years at a time. They were more used to sleeping in the dark. Thus, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the mountain spirit of Fire Peak had awakened and even stretched out its hand at that moment. Send some men there immediately. Old Huang was instantly alerted. The mountain spirit's untimely appearance made him think of an extremely low probability scenario. Teacher, do you suspect that there's an evil force behind this? President Qi instantly understood. A natural spirit like the mountain spirit could only be disturbed by human malice. It would be very difficult for a foundation establishment student's spirit summoning spell to rouse the mountain spirit, unless an even more evil existence happened to be nearby. Thus, the instant that classmate Xiaoming summoned the spirit, evil power poured in through the channel opened by the spirit summoning spell, and the mountain spirit was instantly awakened. If one were to describe this feeling, it would be like a person who was sleeping soundly being slapped in the face. Very quickly, Wang Ling saw the people in red from the station's special forces quickly approaching them. Each of them held a copy of the Code of Nature, and it was clear that they had prepared for a similar crisis. Although the probability of the mountain spirit waking up was very small, they couldn't rule it out. The Code of Nature was a pure music Bible compiled by powerful cultivators. As long as it was combined with a certain sound wave spell, it would have the effect of soothing the spirits of nature. But the situation at the scene was actually far worse than they had imagined. Xiaoming had been possessed by an evil force, and his strength had increased abnormally. Summoning the souls of first or second-class spirit beasts was actually quite basic, but summoning the mountain spirit was a big problem. The human devil who had been following them and observing them in secret was the catalyst that had awakened the mountain spirit. I can't wait any longer. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. He liked peace and quiet. What he hated the most was being disturbed. He didn't want to participate in the national competition this time. What he didn't want even more was to be disturbed. Given the current situation, if he didn't find the root cause, it would be very difficult to coax the mountain spirit to sleep just by chanting the code of nature. His gaze was fixed on the shadow that had been following him for a long time in the dark. Human devil Xiao Lixing was the culprit behind all this. At the same time, Xiao Lixing was overjoyed when he saw the mountain spirit's true form. His holy devil-suppressing strength could devour anything. If he could devour the mountain spirit, he would be 3 times stronger than he had been at his peak. But just as Xiao Lixing was about to make a move, he felt as if he was being watched by a pair of eyes. A pair of huge eyes, like the sun, stared at his back, causing Xiao Lixing to instantly doubt his life. He felt as if he was being stared at by a great power. In comparison, he was like a small meteorite that was being stared at, and could be sucked in at any time. What was going on? Who on earth was it? These were the 2 biggest questions in Xiao Lixing's mind. Then, in the darkness, Xiao Lixing heard footsteps. It was a Foundation establishment youngster from number 60 high who was walking toward him. Xiao Lixing. Could it be him? Xiao Lixing felt his 3 views start to crumble. Previously, he had been wondering if his existence had been discovered. And now, Wang Ling's actions told Xiao Lixing the answer. As Wang Ling's footsteps gradually closed in, that seemingly thin figure gradually approached. Xiao Lixing's emotions were in turmoil. At first he was surprised, then astonished, and finally, he was deeply frightened. Wang Ling stretched out his hand, and used the great purification spell to suppress him. The spirits of all living things that Xiao Lixing had recently devoured instantly gushed out of his black hole-like body. It was only for a moment. The withered spirit plants and dead spirit beasts in the sealed area that General Bai had led the Mahjong trio to earlier had miraculously come back to life. Xiao Lixing's whole body was weak from vomiting. The power of Wang Ling's great purification spell was far beyond Xiao Lixing's imagination. It actually had the powerful effect of turning something rotten into something magical. Who on earth are you? Xiao Lixing had a frightened expression on his face. Wang Ling faced him. He didn't want to say a single word. This guy was too weak. He was weaker than any of the Mahjong trio that Wang Ling had seen before. He had devoured too many souls, but hadn't had time to digest them all. So his strength hadn't grown substantially. Thus, the great purification spell had directly reduced him to his original state. Furthermore, using the King's Eye to connect to the power of Fate Tao, Wang Ling could see that the human devil in front of him was in fact already dead. Since he was already dead, in that case, he should just sleep forever. And so, without any nonsense, Wang Ling stretched out his hand and touched Xiao Lixing's forehead with the great salvation spell. Chapter 1157. The Resurrection of a Dead Person. The same pattern made Wang Ling realize that his previous guess had been spot on. Whether it was Bai Yuquan, President Bai's son, or Nightmare, whom President Qi had captured in the 9-Dragon Pagoda, it was the same person who was pulling the strings behind the scenes. The profound meaning of Fate Tao was to control life and death and defy the heavens to change fate. It wasn't a simple resurrection spell. Although Xiao Lixing had been resurrected, under the control of the power of Fate Tao, the Xiao Lixing of many parallel worlds would become his substitute at a critical moment and die in his place. Thus, a normal heavenly Tao spell wouldn't work at all. But the Great Transcendence spell was different. This was one of the top 10 spells of Wang Ling's 30,000 heavenly Tao, and could transcend all things in the universe. Any evil spirit would dissipate into nothingness under the effect of the Great Transcendence spell. That was to say, after Xiao Lixing was hit by the Great Transcendence spell, even if he was constantly resurrected on the spot because of Fate Tao, as long as Wang Ling didn't remove the Great Transcendence spell, the power of transcendence would always exist. And so, what Xiao Lixing was now performing in front of Wang Ling was a rare death sit-up. Wang Ling didn't know how many Fate Tao the person behind the scenes had allocated to Xiao Lixing. If he had only been allocated 100 times like Bai Yuquan, then Xiao Lixing would have died 100 times. If it had been 3,000 times, he would have died 3,000 times. But compared with human devil Xiao Lixing, Bai Yuquan was a little more stupid. He had combined the power of 100 Fate Tao into one, thinking that he could defeat Wang Ling in this way. Wang Ling felt that when all was said and done, Bai Yuquan was still too young. But according to Ajua, Bai Yuquan was still very tight-lipped. He was now in Leifeng Pagoda suffering the same torture as immortal Shipai back then, and would be punished by lightning every day until he told the truth. And so 1 minute later, after Xia Lixing died nearly 600 times under Wang Ling's great transcendence spell at the speed of a thunderbolt, he was dead for good. If this rate of dying once every 0.1 seconds was recorded, it would definitely be a new world record in cultivation history. But unfortunately, no one had seen this scene. Wang Ling had cast the spell from a relatively hidden place, and no one had seen it at all. After dealing with Xia Lixing, Wang Ling walked out of the underbrush as if nothing had happened. With the death of the first-generation demon, the restless mountain spirits regained their tranquility. The giant hand that was dripping with blazing lava retracted from the summoning circle, and the mountain spirit of Fire Peak once again fell into a deep slumber. As Wang Ling had predicted, Xia Lixing was the source of the uproar. Fortunately, he had acted in time. Otherwise, all the living beings on Fire Peak might have suffered because of the awakening of the mountain spirit. After all, apart from Wang Ling, almost no one could resist the power of nature. Wang Ling had never thought that he would be forced to take a lesson on protecting nature in this 9-Dragon Mountain National Body Technique competition. But in reality, things weren't over yet. First, the mastermind behind the scenes had yet to be found. Second, the Eye of Rebellion curse on Xiaming had yet to be lifted. Xiaming still had lingering fears that he had inadvertently summoned the mountain spirit and almost caused massive destruction. He hadn't yet recovered from his panic, and after the mountain spirit had calmed down, his expression was still blank, and he hadn't come back to his senses at all. The warning was lifted, and the magic ball in the command center, which was responsible for monitoring abnormal energy, calmed down again. Based on the monitoring data on the dashboard, the moment the mountain spirit had woken up, the fluctuations of spirit power on the dashboard had instantly reached a peak, and then dropped in the blink of an eye, like a roller coaster. Strange. Huang Feng frowned. The mountain spirit woke up, yawned, and then went back to sleep? It's very strange. I also think it's suspicious. President Qi also frowned. In their view, the mountain spirit wouldn't wake up for no reason at all. It had to have been alarmed by something. As for the fact that the spirit summoning spell could summon the mountain spirit at the foundation establishment stage, that could in fact be explained as a coincidence. For example, the mountain spirit had already shown signs of waking up, and with the spirit summoning spell, it just so happened to have the effect of a sobering agent. However, the suspicious point wasn't completely clear. They still had to find out why the mountain spirit had been alarmed. The laws of nature are the lifeline of human life and death. No matter how high our cultivation levels are, or how long we can live, the only planet suitable for us is Earth. It doesn't matter how high our cultivation levels are, or how long we can live. We've made a breakthrough in our exploration of other planets recently, and discovered Divine Tao Star. But Divine Tao Star is too far away from us, and there are many other alien life forms living on it. In the end, cultural differences are troublesome, and it's unrealistic for us cultivators to immigrate there at the moment. Old Huang said unhurriedly, so the most important thing is to protect what's in front of us. Many of the headmasters present nodded at these words. It was indeed important to look to the future, but the key was still to focus on the present. In the current cultivation world, humans weren't united enough, and there were still many loopholes that hadn't been addressed. Chapter 1158. Now let us welcome the host of this New Year's Disc Conference, Student Wang Ling, with a round of applause. In human form, Dog 2 stared at his flowing green hair as he calmly hosted the event. Dog 2 wasn't the host of this New Year's Disc Conference, but unfortunately, the program's budget was limited. Just activating the time array to bring the 3 protagonists together in the same space had already cost 99% of the budget. Hence, this New Year's Disc Conference was held in Kushuan's pigeon nest. Thunderous applause rang out in the audience, and grenade-throwing senior immortal, Little Silver and Fengxing's eyes were brimming with tears. Because in this disc conference, Wang Ling, this man who didn't have more than 10 lines in a year, was finally going to speak. Thank you, everyone, for your enthusiastic applause. But please calm down, because the first person to appear is classmate Qinzong, known as the only koi fish in the cultivation world. I heard that classmate Qinzong wasn't qualified to be a guest today, and only became one through a lucky draw. Let us welcome classmate Qin to the stage with a fierce round of applause. On the sofa, Qinzong's face was indescribably excited when Loopy Toad called his name. He quickly walked onto the stage and faced the audience, as well as Wang Ling, who was secretly eating crispy noodle snacks. Qinzong. As you can see, including me, we actually have 5 guests today. That is, me, classmate Xiang Yi, classmate Lin Wan, classmate Sun, and classmate Crispy Noodles. But as you can see, classmate Crispy Noodles has already been eaten by the host, Wang Ling. So from this you can see what kind of ferocious program this is, that even the guests are eaten. Wang Ling. Qinzong. Classmate Xiang Yi is the protagonist of the 3rd book in which Pigeon Kuxuan's brain suddenly spun. He is the man who inherited a wasteland cultivation world. He made his fortune by shuttling back and forth between the 2 worlds, picking up trash and building things. I have to say, this is also the most difficult of the 3 of us. He can be called the model worker among the protagonists. As long as I win the lottery while lying down, I can be the protagonist. As long as classmate Wang Ling lies down and acts cute, he can be the protagonist. Classmate Xiang Yi has died who knows how many times since the book began. Kuxuan Pigeon has allowed him to experience all kinds of novel ways to die. I seriously suspect that in Kuxuan Pigeon's real world, there's a brother called Xiang Yi who once offended old thief Kuxuan, who was then written into the book. Xiang Yi nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. Really? Actually, I've always had this feeling. Qinzong. After student Xiang Yi, let's focus on student Lin Wan. As you can see, student Lin Wan is the only female lead in our 3 books. Kuxian Pigeon obviously doesn't even have a girlfriend, but he gave Xiang Yi a girlfriend. He even specially set Lin Wan to have a toxic constitution. This is obviously revenge against Xiang Yi. Next, student Lotus Sun. Qinzong looked over and saw Lotus Sun, who was sitting in the guest seat, straightening her back and greeting everyone with a smile on her face. Qinzong cleared his throat. I'm very sorry because student Lotus Sun doesn't have many scenes. I can't find anything to complain about. As a woman who was once forgotten by Kuxian Pigeon, student Lotus Sun did her best to stand out in the later parts of the story, but unfortunately, it was all to no avail. Perhaps it was for this reason that student Lotus Sun became the female lead in the Immortal King cartoon. Perhaps this was Kuxian Pigeon's compensation? Lotus Sun. Speaking up to this point, Qinzong heaved a deep sigh, then looked at Wang Ling in the host's seat. Finally, let's focus on the man who ate the guest at the very beginning. Wang Ling. Qinzong. A lot of people say that I became a protagonist because I bribed student Wang Ling, but the truth is that as the only koi in the cultivation world, I refused to be a koi in the beginning. Everyone knows that I threw away the express delivery package from the immortal continent. But fate has chosen me. In the new year, I hope that everyone will be as lucky as me, and that you will pass every test and turn misfortune into fortune. I heard that as long as you leave a message in this paragraph and make a wish, Ling Zhenren will definitely bless you. Thank you. I am Qinzong. Dog 2. Student Qin's speech is very touching. But as the protagonist of Kuxian's 3rd new book, let's hear what student Xiang Yi has to say. Xiang Yi. Hello everyone. I'm that man who has died so many times that even my ashes have been scattered. But I'm still alive and kicking. A lot of people think that Pigeon Kuxian has a grudge against me, but I actually think that he wrote me into this 3rd book as a way to divert attention. He's trying to avoid the fact that he has fallen in love with cross-dressing. He's trying to drown himself in the ocean of writing, so that he can forget his penchant for cross-dressing. But the voice of the masses can't be forgotten. I hope that everyone can speak up in this paragraph and let old thief Kuxian hear the voice of the masses. Sorry, I might have been a little too excited. It's mainly because I finally met my idol, student Wang Ling, before I came. I once asked Pigeon Ku Xian why all three of us are protagonists, and why student Wang Ling can be the main character. Later, I realized that the three of us mean different things to Ku Xian. As everyone knows, Pigeon Ku Xian has the habit of writing theme songs for the protagonists of his books. Student Qin Zong and I each have a custom-made theme song. One is called True, and the other is called Countercurrent Koi, and Countercurrent Koi even has a music video. Student Wang Ling has 3 songs: theme song, interlude, and China-style interlude. Old thief Ku Xian said that Wang Ling is his biological son. Qin Zong is his adopted son. I was picked up from the trash can. Dog 2. I'm very sorry. Student Xiang Yi couldn't control his emotions at this point and suddenly suffered a heart attack. Please take student Xiang Yi down to rest. Student Lin Wan is taking care of him, so I'm afraid he'll be absent from the dissing conference recording. Lotus Sun. Should I call an ambulance? Dog 2. No need. Student Xiang Yi has a resurrection token. If he dies from a heart attack, he can come back to life immediately. Everyone. Dog 2. Next, let's give a warm round of applause to this episode's main star, student Wang Ling. Lotus Sun. Hello everyone. I'm Wang Ling. As soon as he said that, there was a thunderous round of applause. Wang Ling rubbed his ears. He didn't know why, but his words had stirred up the atmosphere. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. Go Brother Ling. Little Silver. Go Master. Mother Wang. Go Ling Ling. Mommy loves you. 3. Wang Ling. Wang Ling. Old thief said if I praise him today, I won't have to worry about crispy noodle snacks next year. But I'm not a man who speaks against his conscience. I have to admit, old thief, he's indeed very handsome. Even in women's clothes he's very beautiful. Sorry. I really can't make it up anymore. Dog 2. I can see that our student Wang Ling is indeed a little nervous. Then let me finish reading Master's script on behalf of my master. Old thief Kushwan, don't think that I won't ridicule you just because I'm the protagonist of the cartoon. The Immortal King isn't updating, but you insist on opening the other 2 books. Don't you know that it's easy to die suddenly when you write a book in the 3rd volume? You don't have Xiang Yi's resurrection token. And because you stay at home every day in the 3rd volume, you've become a month and a half again. You can't even fit into the women's clothes you bought last year. The Immortal King cartoon was supposed to be released in June 2018, but it's been ditched day after day. Don't think that I won't hit you just because you drew me so handsome. What surprises me the most is that there's actually a female protagonist in the cartoon. She's called Lotus Sun. So who is Lotus Sun? Lotus Sun. Kushwan's words. It's almost the new year, and there are actually a lot of things I haven't said yet. But I still want to leave some things to explain to everyone after the Immortal King cartoon is successfully released. Thank you very much for your concern, brothers and sisters. The 2019 Immortal King cartoon has experienced many twists and turns, and we finally welcome new news at the end of the year. There is no doubt that this is a good start. In 2020, Pai Pai Ku sincerely wishes everyone a happy new year and all the best. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.